Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee. Senator Michael Jackson, District 27. We are going to get started. The order of the day will be public defender and then the state prosecutor. So we're going to start. Our analysts will get us started.
Mr. Chairman, personal privilege. Yes. The other subcommittee for one of the other hearings at a point, and I'd really like to be here for the hearing on the uninsured employers fund. So if I'll let you know what my situation is. If we could juggle it a little bit, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll begin. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Barber, and today I'll be presenting the fiscal 26 budget for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services Administration and Offices. The allowance totals $232.8 million, which is an increase of $18.7 million or 8.7% from the working appropriation. I'll begin with a performance analysis. Starting off with recidivism, as you can see in Exhibit 1 on page 6, the one-year recidivism rate decreased across every release category among the fiscal 23 cohort. 197 individuals were returned for a new offense within 1 year of release, which is a 20% decline from the fiscal 22 cohort. DPSCS was asked in the 2024 JCR to submit a report discussing 3-year recidivism data, its analysis of recidivism trends, and a comparison to past years and other states. However, at the time of the writing of this analysis, DPSCS has not submitted the report. The data included in this report has historically been more comprehensive than the Managing for Results performance measures, so without it, DLS's ability to discuss recidivism trends is limited. DLS recommends restricting $100,000 pending a report with 3-year recidivism data for the fiscal 2016 through 2022 release cohorts and the impacts of incarceration on the future outcomes of returning offenders. The next performance measure is contraband levels. As shown in Exhibit 2 on page 8, overall contraband find occurrences across all search methods increased by 39% from fiscal 23 to 24. In fiscal 24, weapons were the most frequently uncovered contraband at 44% of all finds. This is an extremely unusual increase of 375% from fiscal 23 and poses a grave and immediate threat to the safety of inmates and staff. DPSCS should comment on the reason for this increase and the steps being taken to reduce weapons contraband in its facilities. Until fiscal 24, controlled dangerous substances, or CDS, had been the most common type of contraband found. CDS comprised 34% of all find occurrences in fiscal 24, and the CDS find rate increased by 56%. DPSCS reported decreases in the find rates for tobacco, tools and escape paraphernalia, cell phones and their accessories, and alcohol. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows that the overall contraband level detected by the K-9 unit in fiscal 24 has dropped to a level last seen before fiscal 2020. Due to a rise in undetectable CDS in pretrial and correctional facilities. According to DPSCS, this new form of contraband includes synthetic cannabis and mail sprayed with insecticide, neither of which can currently be detected by the K-9 unit. The next measure is the Central Home Detention Unit population. As you can see in Exhibit 4 on page 10, the average daily CHDU population has remained relatively consistent since the pandemic, increasing only slightly in calendar 24 to 208 individuals confined to their homes. Finally, in the 2024 JCR, the Budget Committees requested that DPSCS include a more detailed breakdown of correctional program participation in its annual MFR submission. The requested measures were not included in the fiscal 26 MFR, so DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting the inclusion of program participation data in future MFR submissions. Moving on to the budget, there are 3 proposed deficiency appropriations totaling $2.6 million to support software maintenance, address fiscal 24 operating shortfalls, and fund inmate healthcare costs, mostly for individuals in CHDU. Administration and offices receives a total allowance of $232.8 million. The Information Technology and Communications Division, or ITCD, receives the majority of the most funds of any division at $59.6 million, or 26% of the total. This is followed by Administrative Services at 23%. Exhibit 5 on page 12 shows agency spending by program. The $18.7 million increase from the working appropriation is broken out in Exhibit 6 on pages 13 and 14. General funds increased by $19.4 million, approximately $18.2 million of which is for personnel costs related to transferred positions. Partially offsetting this spending growth is a reduction of $2.7 million for inmate education and training services that are realigned to the Maryland labor budget. The fiscal 26 allowance contains $4.1 million in general funds for body-worn cameras for correctional officers. The pilot program is rolling out this month in the Patuxent Institution, followed by 4 additional facilities in March. The equipment included in the fiscal 25 pilot has been provided by the vendor as a sort of free trial at no cost to the state. Through the vendor, DPSCS has access to an automatic cloud-based system to process, organize, and store footage. DPSCS should discuss the terms of the pilot program and the plan to expand the program in fiscal 26. Due to the state's fiscal outlook, DLS recommends deleting the $4.1 million in general funds for the new body-worn camera program in fiscal 26. Turning to personnel on page 15, the allowance contains 1,279.8 regular positions, which is a net increase of 105.8, mainly due to transfers. 119.8 positions are transferred into the division from other areas of DPSCS, while 2 positions are abolished and 12 are transferred out. The new positions will support administrative functions as well as the Intelligence and Investigative Division and ITCD. The budgeted turnover rate decreases from 11.54% in fiscal 25 to 10.13% in fiscal 26, despite the actual vacancy rate being 14.29% as of December 31st, 2024. Language in the fiscal 25 budget bill restricted funds pending the submission of a strategy to eliminate the use of mandatory overtime. The report was not submitted in time for inclusion in the DPSCS overview analysis, so DLS recommends adding budget bill language to restrict $250,000 pending the submission of the report in fiscal 26. Similarly, DPSCS has not submitted the second of 4 quarterly hiring and attrition reports requested in the 2024 JCR. Thus, DLS recommends adding budget bill language to restrict $250,000 pending the submission of this report in fiscal 26. There are 2 issues discussed in today's analysis. The first issue highlights 2 major information technology projects that are behind schedule. The first project behind schedule is the Computerized Criminal History Project, or CCH, which will replace outdated technology with a state-of-the-art criminal history database and web interface. CCH was first solicited as an on-premises solution, meaning it was intended to be installed and operated on physical servers within DPSCS offices. But during the initial procurement process, DPSCS amended the solicitation to a cloud-based solution. This caused vendors to drop out of the project, and the sole remaining vendor was awarded the contract. But before it could be approved, the department withdrew the contract and chose to restart the process to increase vendor participation. The second solicitation was advertised in July 2022, and DPSCS reported that it received 1 response by the due date, causing the agency to push back the expected contract approval further. Ultimately, DPSCS decided to cancel the process in June 2024. Because of the multiple reissuances and cancellations, the project's $2.3 million federal grant expired, forcing DPSCS to supplement costs with general funds. Now, nearly 4 years after the initial award and withdrawal of the contract, the project remains in its beginning stages. The agency reported that it has decided to pursue an in-house solution under the guidance of the Project Management Office and do it. The assessment phase is now expected to conclude by the end of the first quarter of fiscal '26, but the delays have led to a reduction in planned funding. The allowance includes only $50,000 budgeted in Do It for oversight. DPSCS should explain its current approach to the CCH project, the extent to which Do It is involved, and the reasons for the multiple cancellations and reissuances of the request for proposal. The second project behind schedule is the Electronic Patient Health Record Replacement, or EPHR. Since calendar 2005, the department has relied on its legacy system to track and document critical medical information for managing the health care provided to offenders. The current system has inefficiencies and issues with connecting to external information systems. A contract to replace the EPHR system was previously approved in October 2020, but the vendor failed to meet its contractual obligations, prompting DPSCS to issue a notice of default and terminate the contract in May 2022. The termination of the contract means that the agency paid the vendor $4 million in license costs that are no longer of use. DPSCS has since obtained BPW approval to extend the contract with its legacy vendor to ensure business continuity and adherence to the health record provisions in the Duval v. Moore consent decree. This 2-year contract extension was approved for $2.7 million. DPSCS is now considering utilizing an interagency cooperative purchasing agreement to move the project forward, and this acquisition process is expected to conclude in May 2025, but the project is not estimated to be fully implemented until July 2028. The updated completion date is a concern because the Duval v. Moore consent decree is set to expire in June 2026, 2 years before the estimated completion date. Failure to progress this project could open DPSCS up to litigation. Furthermore, the extension with the legacy vendor raises concerns about the continued use of an outdated system that may not meet the federal guidelines for standards of care. DPSCS should provide an update on the progress of the EPHR project and discuss Duval v. Moore compliance in relation to the services provided by the legacy contractor. Both projects are pressing needs. The ability to quickly access patient and criminal history information would cut down on the amount of employee time spent searching through current records and ease the process for current and former inmates looking to access their information. DLS recommends restricting $500,000 pending the submission of a status report and updated schedule for both projects, describing the agency's procurement strategy for completing the CCH and EPHR projects, as well as evidence that the agency has procured a program manager to carry out the CCH project. The second issue discusses violations of the Public Information Act. The Maryland Public Information Act grants the public a broad right of access to public record while protecting legitimate governmental interests and the privacy rights of individual citizens. The PIA Compliance Board rules on whether an agency has unlawfully denied inspection of a public record or failed to respond to a request within the established time limit. At this time last year, a total of 6 complaints had been made against DPSCS for improper denial of records and failure to respond, making it the most complained against agency. As of the writing of this year's analysis, there have been 6 more complaints filed against DPSCS. The PIA Compliance Board determined DPSCS was in violation of PIA 4 times for failure to respond to requests, while 2 complaints still await decisions. Compliance Board decisions from fiscal 23 to 25 to date are compiled in Exhibit 7 on pages 20 and 21. The board found that DPSCS, quote-unquote, clearly violated the PIA on multiple occasions and awarded fee waivers to complainants. The board found that DPSCS failed to respond to the public in a timely manner, but also found that the agency failed to respond to the board itself and the PIA ombudsman on multiple occasions. While DPSCS is no longer the most complained against agency, it remains a concern that the Compliance Board continues to find DPSCS in violation of PIA, and that members of the public must file complaints to receive responses to their information requests. DPSCS should provide information to the committees on efforts to increase transparency, train records custodians to correctly identify PIA exemptions, and avoid complaints being brought to the Compliance Board. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report on DPSCS's plan to ensure PIA compliance. Finally, turning to the recommended action section on pages 23 through 29, DLS is recommending restricting $500,000 pending a report describing how the agency has incorporated feedback from the Office of Legislative Audit regarding its medical and mental health contracts. I discussed this issue in the overview analysis, but the recommendation appears under Administration and Offices. And that concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, come on up. Bring up who you'd like, and you may start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairman Jackson, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs. I'm the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. As always, with me is my Deputy Secretary of Administration, Joseph Sadal. The department appreciates the collaboration with the Department of Legislative Services and Ms. Barbara's thorough work and analysis. Again, I would like to thank our DBM analyst, Christina Horay-Tuyon, for her advice and guidance during this process. The analysis contains 5 issues for the department's response and 9 recommended actions. DLS requests the department comment on the reason for the increase in contraband levels and the steps being taken to reduce weapons within our facilities. We are constantly fighting against new forms of contraband on a daily basis. Contraband can enter our facilities through external sources, such as smuggled in during visitation, sent through the mail, throwing contraband over the fence, and even through drones. It is also manufactured within the institutions in the form of incarcerated individual-made weapons. The most common types of contraband are Suboxone, synthetic drugs, tobacco, electronics, and weapons made by the incarcerated population. We use a wide variety of methods to intercept contraband to keep our facilities safe. These include X-ray machines, physical searches, pat-downs, and our K-9 unit. Metal detectors are strategically placed in areas where there is heavy traffic. Our contraband interdiction team is deployed to conduct intelligence-based searches across all of our facilities. Our facility maintenance department also plays a critical role in helping to determine the origin of in-house manufactured weapons and works to eliminate access to such materials. Weapon contraband recovery has increased due to a greater emphasis on conducting frequent and unannounced searches. The intelligence unit is responsible for gathering within the facility to identify any threats to the security of the facilities, the staff, and the incarcerated individuals. The information gathered is used in efforts to interrupt planned assaults, intercept contraband from being introduced into the facilities, and disrupt or eliminate assault driven by retaliation between groups. The results of this proactive process have proven to be effective in recovering and intercepting contraband as well as interrupting assaults. Most of these searches are conducted in conjunction with our K-9 and Special Operation groups. Each academy class also spends time assisting with our CIT team on planned searches to instill the correct search methodology for the onset of their career within DPSCS. DLS has also requested the department to discuss the terms of the body-worn camera pilot program and the plan to expand the program in fiscal year 2026. The DOC body-worn camera pilot program involves 100 cameras and associated digital and physical infrastructure deployed across 5 designated facilities at no cost to the state. They have already been deployed in Patuxent and ECI, with rollouts at MCIW, BC-BIC, and MBIC. The pilot will run for a minimum of 90 days, but will continue until the department has determined the operational viability of an effective agency-wide rollout of the body-worn camera program. These cameras have been assigned to employees who are on high-traffic posts. Body-worn cameras serve as a deterrent of inappropriate behavior, both for the officer and the incarcerated individual. To offer some examples of success in other states, the Florida Department of Corrections has seen a 42% reduction in staff assaults by using body-worn cameras. In New York, there has been a 52% reduction in PREA complaints. In Lexington County, South Carolina, a 69% reduction in correctional officer injuries has been observed. The introduction of body-worn cameras is an important step in increasing accountability and transparency to the public and to oversight entities, and the digital infrastructure provides a secure platform for managing evidentiary disclosure. Correctional systems that employ body-worn cameras have also seen a decrease in litigation due to the introduction of video evidence that can now add proper context to those incidents. DLS has requested the department comment on its current approach to the computerized criminal history project, the extent to which DO-IT is involved, and the reasons for multiple cancellations and reissuance of the request for proposal. The project is progressing as planned with its updated strategy to prepare for future cloud migration. After the initial solicitation was canceled, the agency received approval from DO-IT to work with IBM and Amazon Web Services to conduct an in-depth analysis and clarification of the CCH code base. This aligns with the FY26 IT project request schedule, with the goal of completing the analysis of the legacy code base by the end of FY25. Once the refactoring phase is finished, the agency will release a new solicitation for replatforming the CCH application. DLS has also requested the department provide an update on the progress of the EPHR project and discuss Duval versus Moore compliance in relation to the services provided by the legacy contractor. The department remains focused on securing a new implementation vendor. In order to expedite the vendor selection process and meet the major informational technology development project requirements, the department is actively pursuing alternative procurement methods to expedite the selection of a vendor experienced in correctional health records. Procurement efforts are expected to conclude by the end of FY25 in line with the FY26 information technology project requests. DPSCS continues to collaborate with its legacy vendor under an approval contract extension to ensure uninterrupted services, licensing, and enhancements while maintaining compliance with the Duval mandates. DLS has also asked the department to provide information to the committee on efforts to increase transparency, train record custodians to correctly identify PIA exemptions, and avoid complaints being brought to the PIA Compliance Board. The Office of Constituent Services, or OCS as we call it, continues to make great strides to ensure transparent, timely, and complaint responses to PIA requests, which have led to a sharp decrease in complaints brought to the PIA CB. All DPSCS PIA requests are now funneled through OCS and a centralized electronic tracking system, which was launched in January of 2024. As of today, OCS has reviewed and responded to all outstanding PIA requests and remains up to date with processing new PIA requests within the required 30-day timeframe. Staff members have received training sessions and new SOPs have been created with checks and balances in place to guarantee timely responses to all of our requesters. A 2.5-hour PIA training was given by the MPIA Ombudsman and the Office of the Attorney General for the department, which was recorded and shared with staff along with additional PIA resources. OCS conducted its first annual refresher training last month, facilitated by the Office of the Attorney General, and will continue to provide training refreshers to both staff and PIA liaisons on an annual basis. DPSCS is committed to enhancing transparency and timeliness in responding to Public Information Act requests. DLS recommends 9 actions, and we concur with 8 of those. We strongly disagree with the $4.1 million reduction in funds for our body-worn cameras. As outlined in my previous remarks, body-worn cameras are a necessary investment in the daily safety of staff and incarcerated individuals. And we ask for your support in ensuring that the officers in this department have the necessary de-escalation tools that they need. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before I go around the horn, I have a few questions. Thank you for the report. Can you tell me what type of process you have in place for the numerous requests you get for reports from us and others? Because we seem to have a number of reports that have not been submitted on time.
The JCR reports?
Yes, ma'am. And other reports.
And other reports.
And so can you tell me, or send us something, but I'd rather you articulate to us your process when you get a request. If you have a team of technical writers or critical writers that take care of those for you, consistency and continuity is important. But what's most important, particularly always, but particularly during these tough fiscal times when we're making these decisions, you know, we need to have all information in front of us as we're making these decisions. So if you could explain that to us, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for that question, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Our legislative team is responsible for putting those reports together. They meet with the subject matter experts depending on what area it is to help also facilitate the writing of those reports. We also have our policy group, which is headed by our Assistant Secretary of Policy and Data, Ms. Garino, that is essential in making all of that come together. And then once my leg team has put that together, it comes to me for review. I will bless it, and then it comes over to your staff. I know that a couple of the reports have been completed, and you should be receiving them this week.
Is there a particular, do you keep records of when requests come in and from requests to submission or requests to your desk and then submission?
My executive assistant, I don't personally, but yes, my office does that.
So I would love if you could share that with us. All right, I'd appreciate that. Secondly, is there any particular reason why we don't have the, unless I missed it, the recidivism report?
I will defer to, I don't know if my assistant secretary is here or not, but I will get that answer for you.
Is she here? Is
Angela right here? Oh, you want to come up here and
come on up.
She is the subject matter expert on that.
Thank you, sir, for that question, Senator Jackson. The delays in this year report were just due to some data loss that occurred internally that required it to be reformulated.
And these are typically 3-year reports, right? Covering 3 years?
That's correct. Unlike most other states, Maryland actually calculates its recidivism very soon after the close of the fiscal year. So there's normally not a lot of time for data maturation. But we're happy and agree with the committee's recommendation for an updated one.
And you mentioned there was some lost data. Have you guys taken care of that issue?
Yes, we have. It just required us it affected the timeline of the calculation.
Okay, thank you. And the last one for me, Madam Secretary, the PIA requests, very important. One of the things that, we're responsible for indirectly is to ensure that, and directly in some modes, but to ensure that we are being fiscally responsible. And There are a number of things that can lend to the state having to pay out dollars where we can't, where your agency and other agencies can't be properly defended. And so these reports are vital. The PIA component is vital. What's the number of folks to date who have received the training? And you have a classification of folks who are receiving that training?
We do. So to update you on that, when I came in the office, we had over 600 PIA requests that were backlogged. Today, we have none. Some of the things that I did to correct that is that we identified that the staff that were in that office were not properly trained and they were not effectively working. So we reassigned them to other areas and we hired new staff. That's when we brought in both the ombudsman as well as the Office of the Attorney General to start training them. That unit now comes under my Deputy Chief of Staff that is with us today. And I'm happy to say that they're up to date. And you have how many in your unit?
There's 9 total.
9 total are in that unit right now. And there's also a manager and supervisor so that we have a checks and balances of what's going on. They also, the Deputy Secretary initiated a tracking system, something that they did not have in place prior to my administration, that allows us to go back and actually look at where we are in the process of completing those cases.
Thank you. That lends to one more. So does the agency have, I know you're working with Do It as, you know, this IT component is a challenge across the state. Has the agency thought of engaging in some sort of a dashboard system where you can pull up information at any time throughout your entire agency? And if you have, could you expound on that, please?
That is our ultimate goal. Secretary, Assistant Secretary.
Certainly. Like many other agencies, each agency has a chief data officer, and we share in our development internally on a quarterly and monthly basis techniques that we use to better manage our data for both programmatic and policy planning as well as operations. The agency utilizes a number of dashboards across different platforms, both built into the databases that we manage, as well as a number specifically within operations tracking, certainly within the administrative department, within HR, within employee relations unit, and has made significant strides within the past 6 months to actually deploy and upgrade the tools that we're using to map out processes that are now centrally tracked that previously were not.
Thank you. And if it's not already there, or if your intent is not already there, could you add that reporting mechanism to that dashboard?
Yes, absolutely,
Please.
sir.
All right. Thank you all. Senator Lewis-Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today. I want to pursue some questions relative to the Computerized Criminal History Project status, also referred to as CCH. You decided to cancel the process in June of 2024 and apparently lost a federal grant for that. Now working with Do It to coordinate going forward. That gives me some concerns. We had a presentation yesterday from Senator Hester in our committee about some concerns with Do It, coordination, outsourcing to multiple times. So the recommendation is that you should explain your current approach to the CCH project. And it was also mentioned you've been losing some data, the extent to which Do It is involved, and the reasons for the multiple cancellations and reissuances of the request for proposal. So could you update us on that status, and are you looking for other alternatives than going through Do It?
So I think in relation to kind of backtrack a little bit, in relation to the most recent canceled procurement, right? One of the things, there's kind of a developing space in the IT CCH world right now of SaaS solutions being utilized to kind of be onboarded, where they provide this entire interface and then the CCH is handled through that, right? During the process of procurement, CCH is obviously incredibly important to us, right? It's how we look up criminal history. So looking at the options that were available, looking at the SaaS solution that was offered, it was ultimately determined by the agency that the most effective and we think cost-effective method as well was to kind of do this in-house, right? So rather than outsourcing to a vendor who we would potentially be on the hook for as long as we used it and spend the amount of money that's associated with that, we wanted to take the information and take the system that we have and see if we could build it out in a more effective and efficient manner ourselves, and then manage and own the system as we have since 1978 or 78. So that's what we're working with Do It on right now, as far as doing developing the analysis of how can we most effectively take the existing data infrastructure, existing system that we have, and then upgrade it to a point where it's now going to be cloud-based. We're not working on a mainframe any longer, and a lot of these system and pinpoints that we need to have automated instead of using manual processes, we're able to do so.
But my concern is that isn't Do It going to just outsource their part of the function? And so going through Do It, you've got another middleman, which could further delay the project.
I think Do It's role, as I understand it, right, is to be the overseer of these, major IT projects, right? And their guidance and expertise is the kind of thing that we as an agency, as good as we think we are at IT, obviously value. And so I think our goal in working with Do It, as we should, as the kind of preeminent authority on IT in the state of Maryland of government, is to take their advice and work with them to develop the appropriate processes to get the work done. And at the end of the day, the goal is for us to have our own system to be able to manage internally and make the necessary upgrades.
Okay, I guess I'm just suggesting a contingency plan.
I think in all things procurement, that is something that we look at because the wild world of procurement is fun like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Rosebeth.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the confiscated weapons. This is very naive because I've visited prisons, but I've never had the experience in prison other people do. Most of the time, how are people getting these weapons in or building these weapons there? Big picture, there's this huge spike. I don't quite get my head around it.
Great question. Thank you for that question, sir. So when you think about facility, think of very aging facilities that need a lot of repair and that have for a long time, even going back to when I was in uniform, not received the funding that it was needed to care for it. So we have, for example, windows that need to be replaced. These weapons, don't think of them as a weapon you would see on the street, a knife or things like that. They will take a piece of a window that is broken and they will scrape it on the concrete until it becomes sharp and it becomes a weapon for them. They'll use their sheet and wrap it around the bottom. They'll take a chair. They'll take a utensil. Those are the type of weapons that.
That's what you mean. So these are not like guns.
No, sir.
I see. I misunderstood.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, these are in-house made weapons that they use anywhere from their utensils that they eat.
No, I get it now.
To other fixtures to.
Okay, that answers my question.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They got just about what I was going to go. It's good that I'm last. But
Teamwork.
one of my concerns is the Public Information Act. And one of the problems that we have is we have that in law for a good reason. And when we violate that, there has to be answers to that. Why did we do that? Can we maybe answer some of the areas where we see at least 10 times it's been denied or failure to respond to these actions?
So I can tell you that for the 2023-24, the decrease in the complaints from the PIACB, there were 8 cases. And in 2023, 2 of those cases were actually appeals that were made. And that we did correct both of those. And then, as I stated earlier, the backlog was actually 605, and that was from 2020 to January of 2023. We went back and reviewed every last one of them, and we completed all of them by February of 24. And it was because we had to revamp. So in all honesty, prior to me coming into this position, I can only speculate that the people that were there were not the appropriate people and the right people to be doing the job. And that's why they were all reassigned. We re-recruited. We brought in new people. We made sure they had background, had in their background skills for not just customer service, but writing skills, ability to review and ask questions, and we built that team over again. So I am certain that you will not see that backlog again.
I know you don't want that. I don't think anybody wants anything like that. But, you know, it's just important that we're ahead of that and make sure, and you're right, we have the right people in place.
Absolutely.
To make sure it doesn't happen again. But everything is already taken care of, so we're good there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. If you have anything further, if not, we're done. You know, it's almost decision time. We're going to say that to everybody and have said that to others. If there's anything you need to get to us before decisions, let us know.
Please consider our body-worn cameras. It's very important to us. I will tell you that we piloted at ECI as well as Patuxent. We have been at numerous roll calls, sharing that with them. The staff at ECI, actually it was on Friday, when were we down there? Friday? Tuesday. My days are mixed up. Tuesday, we were down there. They were very excited about it because we were able to go back and look at some footage that actually showed about 90 seconds before the officers doing exactly what they were supposed to do, trying to de-escalate this individual and the individual not adhering to what the officer said. So in all means, we spent about $2.7 million in settlements last year, and it's my hope that this will help us protect our officers to say that they are doing what they're supposed to do, and we don't have to settle these cases because of the challenges that inmates bring to us.
We do appreciate that. And in your policies, I'm sure you have the proper things in place to protect the folks over at Patuxent.
Absolutely. The goal of the body-worn camera is to protect the officer. I need to make that clear. It is not an I got you, it is protected in every way we can.
As well as the inmates over there, you have the,
Yes.
you have the classifications of folks
And we
over there.
also, to add to that, we also, the policy was reviewed by our union partners.
good.
So they are very familiar with the policy, and that's how we got this pilot started.
Last question, did MDH weigh in on your policy for Patuxent?
Not MDH, but the psychologist and the director of Patuxent did weigh in on
Okay,
it.
that's great, that's great. Make sure that's documented, please. Thank you all. We have one witness, Mr. Dada. And Madam Secretary, could you hang around? So, thank you. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
If you have written documentation you want to submit to us, we will take that as well, or you can get it to us later.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, I'll get it to you later.
Absolutely.
Okay, good afternoon, legislature. My name is Oluwaseun Dada, and I'm a proud member of AFSCME Local 3661. I serve as a correctional officer sergeant in the Department of Public Safety, Correction Services, Home Detention Unit. My colleagues and I are responsible for monitoring individuals released from prison to serve the remainder of their sentences at home. When they violate the program, it's our job to detain and transport them back to the correctional facility. The work is dangerous. We have numerous close calls. One of the most alarming was when a colleague located a loaded firearm hidden in an incarcerated individual's belongings. That could have been a tragedy. Despite the risk we face daily, our unit is dangerously understaffed. Making matters worse, we are sent into people's homes wearing ballistic vests that are provided only a tiny 5 by 4 inches protection area against sharp objects. Meanwhile, the people we monitor have full access to kitchen knives and other weapons. We have no clear use of force policy to guide us when family members become hostile. And on top of that, the department cut our training from 6 months to just 3 weeks, removing critical courses. This is unacceptable. Our unit has been neglected for too long and is putting both officers and the public at risk. We need your support for a budget that allows us to secure the resources we need: better staffing, proper equipment, comprehensive training, and clear policy that keeps us safe. In support of this analysis, we do support efforts to bring down mandatory overtime. The budget seems to transfer over 100 pence from one DPSS to another. We cannot reduce overtime if we are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Please get your testimony to us in writing.
Yes, sir.
If you would,
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Secretary, if you all, hopefully you all were taking notes, and then we'll follow up. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
All right, this concludes the hearing for Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. Next up, Maryland Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration. Come on up, and our analysts will get us started as soon as the room clears. So, Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Steve McCulloch here from the Department of Legislative Services to present the State Highway Administration budget analysis for fiscal 2026. As you see on page 1, the fiscal 2026 operating budget for SHA increases by $25.5 million or 7.1%. As we've seen in other modes, this does not include a late budget amendment for fiscal 2025 that has been approved but is not made it into the budget documents. That was $5 million for SHA. If that's taken into account, then the 2026 increase drops to $20.5 million or 5.7%. The managing for results discussion begins on page 4. Exhibit 1 on that page shows the number of traffic fatalities, the fatalities per 100,000 miles traveled, and then the black line is the maximum fatality rate goal. As you can see from 2021 through 2023, the number of fatalities increased, and between 2022 and 2023, the rate increased despite the fact that revenue miles traveled also increased, which would tend to, if the number of fatalities stay the same and the vehicle miles increase, then that drops. So that's a disturbing trend that we've seen in recent years. On page 5, Exhibit 2 shows the annual person hours of delay and travel time reliability. This is looking at the congestions on our roadways. As you can see, the bar beginning in 2020 was very low. That was the pandemic-related decrease in traffic. But since that time, congestion has been increasing, and over the last 3 years, ending in 2024, has exceeded the goal of maximum annual person hours of delay. The maximum percentage of unreliable travel time did kind of level out between 2023 and 2024. Turning to page 6, Exhibit 3 shows the percentage of bridges in Maryland's highway network with one or more components rated as poor or worse. And I always do like to point out that this does not mean a bridge is unsafe. SHA closes unsafe bridges to travel. Any component, meaning like the deck, if it had too many potholes, would be rated as poor. That would put it into this category. You can see that since 2015, 2016, that percentage has been declining steadily. And now, for the last 2 years, remains under 1% of total bridges that Maryland owns and maintains, which is one of the best levels in the nation. System preservation is also shown in Exhibit 4 on page 7. This looks at the highway maintenance condition. There is a goal to maintain and improve at least 85% of the state network in an overall preferred maintenance condition. You can see that over the past 10 years, the state has met this goal 6 out of those 10 years. Turning to page 8, Exhibit 5 shows the overview of agency spending. SHA relies on its own workforce, both permanent and contractual FTEs, to do a lot of its work, but they also maintain a lot of services through contractual contracts with companies. You can see from Exhibit 5 that just under 50% of SHA's work is done with its own personnel, with contractual services being around 34%. Exhibit 6 on pages 9 and 10 is the proposed budget increase chart. As I said at the beginning, $25.5 million increase. Nearly $6 million of that is in personnel. But you can see under the operations, there's an $8.3 million increase that represents restored funding from the cost containment the department made last year in anticipation of not having the revenues that did come in. I would also note that the second line under the operations is kind of a new item for SHA and is fairly significant. They are maintaining and rehabilitating their current dump truck fleet because they were finding it difficult with supply chain issues and other issues to get sufficient number of new dump trucks, so they are being forced to put some money into maintaining what they already own. Turning to page 10, just one note at the bottom on the winter maintenance and snow removal budget. The administration has been budgeting snow removal costs at the 5-year average of the actual expenditures for several years, and the current year, 2025, does meet that at $69.8 million. However, they've already exceeded that expenditure level for the current year and are estimating that it would be over $100 million. So that there's a $30 million the closeout that they're going to have to cover. For fiscal 2026, the number actually drops in the budget because the 5-year average dropped, and so there is $64.2 million budgeted for that purpose. Personnel is shown on page 11 at the top. SHA does have 8 new positions in the allowance for the operating budget, including 3 transportation engineers, 2 highway operation positions, and 1 administrator, 1 program, and 1 executive position. Similar to other modes, DLS is recommending that these positions be denied, not that the positions themselves are not needed, but that with the overall departmental number of vacancies, that vacant positions that are not as important as these positions should be identified and reclassified to fill those positions. The PAYGO capital discussion begins on the bottom of page 11 with the first issue or update is the state aid mandated capital grants, also known as highway user revenues. The Exhibit 7 on page 12 shows that the 2026 allowance of $445.8 million is a $52.6 million increase over the current year. The majority of that increase is directly attributable to the fact that in 2025, local share of the account that determines aid is 18%, and in 2026, that's increasing to 20%, at which level it's under current law will stay for 26 and 27 before declining in 2028 to the base level in statute. Exhibit 8 on page 13 shows the county municipality numbers by county there, and then turning to Exhibit 9 on page 14, this is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding grants that were received. You can see from that that SHA has been awarded 9 grants over the past year, totaling $62.2 million. We have asked SHA to brief the committee on the impacts of a Federal Highway Administration memo that have put on hold the electric charging build-out, and so we've asked SHA to update you on the effect it's had on their current as well as possible future activity in that program. The 2025 to 2030 capital program, 6-year program for SHA, including other funds that do not flow through the state budget, totals $6.8 billion. This is $564 million less than the last 6-year program from last year. Exhibit 10 on page 16 shows the 6-year program by investment category. The fiscal 2026 allowance is shown in the pie chart on page 17, Exhibit 11. And you can see that the majority of the capital program falls into the minor program category, with major projects comprising another 14% of the capital program. Exhibit 12 on page 18 breaks out the $860 million for the minor program by investment category, and then Exhibit 13 on page 19 shows how this funding is distributed by project type. And as you can, looking at those two exhibits, you'll see that system preservation makes up the majority of funding in their capital program. Looking to page 20, Exhibit 14, this is the cash flow changes between the 25 allowance and the 25 working appropriation. There was a decrease of $124.2 million between those 2 points. And then between the bottom of that exhibit, 25 working appropriation to the 26 allowance, there's a further $16.3 million decrease. Exhibit 15, which goes from pages 21 through 30, I won't go over anything specific, but this provides a list of the major capital program in this SHA capital program for fiscal 2026 through 2030. In order to be on this list, there needed to be at least $1 million in the allowance fiscal 2026, or at least $5 million in the 6-year spending during the current CTP program. So this is arranged by county with statewide at the end. You can cruise that and look at your own areas at your leisure. Turning now to page 30 then, on Exhibit 16 shows the first year funding chart for SHA. You can see that of their $1.1 billion, they have just $2 million that is first year funding. The rest of it represents ongoing spending for projects already in process. That first year funding is less than 1%. It's 0.2%, 0.2%. The projects that make up that first year funding are shown in Exhibit 17 on page 31. The significant changes from the last CTP are shown in Exhibit 18 on page 32. There were 3 projects that were added to the construction project program and 2 projects that were moved from the development and evaluation program to the construction program. Recommended actions for SHA are shown on page 33. As I indicated earlier, the one recommendation on the operating is the deletion of the new positions, instead should be reclassified vacant positions. And then for the capital program, the recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? Seeing none, welcome. And I owed you a response yesterday regarding some synchronization of some lights on Route 5.
Yep.
I have them.
Okay. Very good.
Before you leave, I'll make sure you get those. We had a long day yesterday, but
no worries
feel
at all.
free to proceed. Great to see you all again.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair Jackson and members of the committee. For the record, Samantha Biddle, Deputy Secretary of Transportation, joined today by Will Pines, Administrator of the State Highway Administration. Secretary Wiedefeld sends his regrets he's not able to be here with us today. I, of course, want to thank Steve for his utmost professionalism and thorough understanding of SHA and, of course, the entire department. As you all know, State Highway manages and maintains nearly 18,000 lane miles and more than 2,500 bridges across the state. On any given day, we have 300 active work zones in operation with our employees and contractors working to keep Maryland going forward. And I'll keep my remarks brief, but before I hand it over to Will, I do want to take a moment to thank this committee and the entire General Assembly for the work last year to pass the Road Worker Protection Act. As you know, we're coming up on the grim anniversary of the incident on the Baltimore Beltway that took the lives of 6 road workers. And, with the leadership of the Lieutenant Governor and the support of this body, the Road Worker Protection Act goes a long way to keep our workers and roadway users safe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Administrator Pines to provide more information about the important work that State Highway is doing across the state.
Absolutely. Administrator Pines, before you go, I'll first of all, it was the right thing to do, unfortunately during a tragic time. But there is a piece of legislation working its way through both chambers. We'll see what happens with it to further recognize your folks who are out there on the highway. There's some language changes that need to be made to that because we don't want to mix, classifications of public safety folks, 911 responsive folks versus what you all did. The key is recognition through your agency and through the General Assembly for those folks who are charged with being there when we need them. And we want to make sure they get the clear recognition that they deserve and not get it mixed up with law enforcement, fire, and others. So we're working on language. We had the bill in Tripoli yesterday. The House, I believe, has already had their bill. So we're looking at some language changes. But we certainly appreciate the work that men and women.
Thank you for the partnership.
In the entire department, and SHA in particular right now. So Administrator Pines.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the remarks there.
Absolutely.
The issues that we face with our highway workers, it's both important and it's personal. These are real people in our family at work, and so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all of the members on this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and I also want to echo the gratitude towards Steve for his professionalism and dedicated service to DLS. I know it's coming to an end, but appreciate the cooperation and great work that he's done with us. I'm pleased to tell you today about big things that SHA is doing across Maryland and focused on our key goals of ensuring safety for our customers and employees, delivering a multimodal transportation system, and promoting job creation and economic development. As the Deputy Secretary noted, SHA's $6.8 billion consolidated transportation program for fiscal years 2025 through 30 includes additional funding that's been advanced thanks to Governor Moore. Make no mistake, this investment is critical to address long-standing needs. These funds will advance critical projects to make our roads safer, create jobs, and boost Maryland's economy. Additionally, it will help us unlock more federal dollars, and we're already working with our federal partners to apply these funds to the projects that are in the CTP. I'd like to share with you some of the major projects that will benefit from the additional funding, all of which would otherwise be on hold due to the fiscal constraints. These include US 15 in Frederick County, our county executive here today, and we're investing more than $162 million to build additional lanes and other features to improve safety, capacity, and traffic flow. This critical project for regional mobility and economic development has been on the books for a while, and we want to see it through. Additionally, I-81 in Washington County will fund the construction of a 4-mile, $99 million widening to improve safety and ease congestion. I-81 is part of the National Highway Freight Network, and this project will improve commercial vehicle capacity and boost Maryland's economy. We are proud of our recent ribbon cutting on US 1 Phase 1, the Multimodal Safety Improvements Project, and this budget will support continuing that work with funding, planning, and design for US 1 Phases 2 and 3 as shown in the CTP, and that we're actively working with our federal partners to bring federal funds for these phases. Other projects restored with the governor's support include planning and design for Medical Center Drive at the Capitol Beltway in Prince George's County, planning and design for the 795 interchange at Dolefield Boulevard in Baltimore County. And these restorations are in addition to other big things in the CTP that continue, including our continued construction for the $268 million interchange at Maryland 4 and Suitland Parkway, and ongoing work on the Baltimore Beltway to turn the median shoulder into a travel lane for peak hour use to reduce congestion. We're also continuing department-wide investments in the safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, and others we consider what's known as a vulnerable road user on our roadway network. Under the Secretary's leadership, MDOT has adopted a complete streets policy outlining our commitment to make our network accessible to every Marylander. SHA has put this policy into action with the launch of our Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, or what we call the PSAP program. This plan is published on our context-driven website, so you read it at your leisure, along with specific project details for the corridors across the state. The PSAP projects are focused on data-driven, safety-focused improvements that have minimal impacts to right-of-way and utilities, and are limited in scope purposely so that they can be accomplished quickly and cost effectively. I'm proud to say that since we last discussed this concept last year, we've launched the PSAP projects in 13 corridors. These 13 corridors experienced 425 crashes with vulnerable road users in a 4-year period, including 67 serious injury and 31 fatal crashes. And all of these corridors have crash rates significantly higher than the statewide averages. For example, Maryland 650, 201, and 150 experience 8 to 9 times more vulnerable roadway user fatalities per mile than the statewide average. These are critically dangerous roads. We've held public workshops in each area to gather input and help us select specific tools that best fit those communities' needs. This year, we'll go back to many of those areas with detailed proposals and get additional feedback. We know that more is needed with similar PSAP and vulnerable road user corridors. And this budget proposal includes $27.5 million of additional funding towards these types of complete streets improvements. These additional funds will allow SHA to implement other critical safety improvements, like addressing the vulnerable road user safety improvements on US 40 in Frederick County from Old Camp Road to US 15. Beyond our investments in physical infrastructure improvements, SHA is also supporting Senate Bill 520 and House Bill 348. This is a motor vehicle speed monitoring systems bill that relates to these specific safety corridors. The bill recognizes the disproportionate dangers on certain safety corridors in SHA's vulnerable road user safety assessment. These corridors make up only 3% of SHA's total roadway miles, but experience 20% of all vulnerable road user deaths. We must shift our fast and furious roadways away from a need for speed mindset to one that uses all available options to get everyone home safely every day. Senate Bill 520 and House Bill 348 will help us toward that Vision Zero goal. We're also innovating through our quick build projects and enhancing safety with numerous spot improvements. For example, last year, we also upgraded 1,009 crosswalks at 462 intersections across the state, and we're continuing this initiative in 2025. These efforts are all part of our aggressive approach to make our roadways safer for all users and to move Maryland closer to our goal of Vision Zero. Zero fatalities on our roadways, including protecting our workers and our employees. Having infrastructure that's in good working order is also critical towards that mission, and we're focused on system preservation and maintaining our assets in a state of good repair. In fiscal year 2026, we have $859 million budgeted in our capital program for those system preservation projects. This will address state of good repair needs in pavement, bridges, and other critical assets. We must have a unified message on safety to succeed in another key aspect of our mission, which is to recruit and cultivate the next generation of engineers and transportation professionals. We have focused on this as a team, and over the past 2 years, we've cut our vacancy rate in half. In February of 2023, SHA's vacancy rate was 12.1%. Over last year, we maintained an average of 6.1%, dipping down to 5.6% in November of 2024. As indicated in the DLS report, we had a brief spike at the end of the year with retirements, and that's kind of common to happen in the department, but we are now, as of today, back down to 6%. Beyond recruitments of new hires, we're also focused on retention of our employees and team excellence, building leadership among the SHA team. We have several SHA team members in Leadership Maryland's Emerging Leaders Program, and last year we graduated dozens of employees in our own 12-week Leadership Education and Development Program known as LEAD. On the operating side, the FY26 budget also includes an additional $4 million for mowing and litter cleanup. We know litter cleanup is an important issue from a standpoint of aesthetics, economic vitality, and safety. Our leadership action on litter has also included updating and re-energizing our Adopt a Highway program to make it easier for community groups to sign up. We welcome everyone to show their civic pride in the fight against litter, so please visit our updated website on the Adopt a Highway program. Now, specifically turning to the DLS recommendations, SHA respectfully requests the retention of the 8 positions in the proposed budget to support critical asset management and program management functions. As indicated in our response, we're actively working and constantly addressing attrition and vacancies near our budgeted turnover rate. Our existing positions have declined over the years, and we need our positions to perform critical state functions. The 8 budgeted positions will specifically help us leverage more federal dollars to deliver faster projects for critical programs. Related to the second DLS item, we provided a detailed written breakdown of the status of federal electric vehicle programs. And so I'd be happy to discuss those matters further if requested. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our Deputy Secretary Biddle, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Before we go around, I want to have a couple of comments. One, Senate Bill 805 and House Bill 106 was the piece of legislation I was speaking to you. Again, there are some amendments that are in the works. So, but again, that's another mechanism to recognize your employees. You talked about the Adopt a Highway. I think I mentioned to you the other day, if you would like, we could actually share that as well on our social media information as well. Get folks re-energized about getting back out there in the community and doing their part. Their
Absolutely.
eyes and ears and their feet and hands to kind of get out there and adopt the highway here. A number of organizations that would be interested in doing that.
That'd be excellent. The new website has a graphical interface where you can see a map of the entire state and all routes that are available to adopt. So we update it live as new adoptions occur. Anything that comes off, you can see that on the screen, so you can know if your community has a route nearby that's available.
Yeah, so highways are important, obviously, but in some of the areas of our state, we're in the rural areas, and those are numbered roads which belong to you as well. And so there are some communities that would probably engage also. So, Mr. Administrator, we talked briefly about your vehicles yesterday. Yesterday? Day before yesterday.
It all blurs together after a while.
It's all the same. And I understand the challenge that you're in. I mean, you mentioned yesterday, 600 vehicles, 100 or so of those vehicles are non-operable, and you have to, perform maintenance yourself. So as we mentioned yesterday, please keep us informed, how you're moving forward with that. What we don't want is to, we want to minimize your contracting out. You have to do what you have to do, but we certainly don't want us to be in a position where we are trying to contract more than what we have as we move forward. We certainly hear your requests about the 8 positions. We will be weighing that as we go forward. And lastly, I think I believe you responded to the Calvert County side of my district for the synchronization on Route 4 going into Calvert County. But on Route 5 in Prince George's County going into Charles County, we're talking about from Surratt's Road, where the hospital is, down to the Charles County line. So primarily where they put the new light at Earnshaw, down at the bottom of the hill before you go up to Moore's Road. We're working with your agency on the intersection at Moore's Road due to the Royal Farms that was placed there, and folks can't seem to drive by it going north, and just because there's one up the road, they're trying to cross over there, so it's causing some challenges for us. But I will pass it on. But those were the areas on Route 5, and some of that may have been addressed. I'm not sure if it got caught up in what was going on at Moore's Road, but that synchronization, that's where the slinky occurs once you get past the last overpass at Route 5 and Woodyard Road. It begins to
Right. I did get an update on Morse Road prior to this hearing. That intersection currently has a half signal. We have design underway now, and we expect the signal at that intersection to be completed within this calendar year.
All right, thank you very much. That'd be great for me. I'm gonna go to Senator Salling because you're gonna welcome the Madam County Executive when we get to that point. Senator Salling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for the briefing that we had for Baltimore County and for being here today. I'm going to continue to talk about a little bit what we talked about in Baltimore County about our highways. And one of our biggest concerns is now the new Autobahn on 695. It's bad. If you talk to any Baltimore County resident, if you talk to any or most, if you talk to every senator and delegate, they'll tell you there's people driving on that road going at least 100 miles an hour at times. And it's gotten so bad that if there's an accident, it's going to be death. People are going to die. And I see the people not driving on the road, they're driving on the sides of the road, cutting people off. I don't know what the mindset is, but all I can tell you is it's kind of crazy out there. It is. And but it's very dangerous. And I see this all the time, and I talk to my delegates and senators, and they tell me the same thing. It's really troubling. It's really bothering to me that we're not having the safe roads that we should have, safe highways, responsible people out there driving. And I know we put something in law, and I see a lot of out-of-state tags, more than usual. And I did a drive-along with a police officer, and we had a very serious accident off of Route 40, matter of fact. And we were right in the intersection where they had a bad accident with a construction driver and a pedestrian driver, a car. And the truck hit the vehicle, and the truck was from Virginia. And it wasn't his vehicle. It was his father's vehicle. And his license was from Maryland. And my problem is this. It's a very serious ongoing problem. And I go to Florida, I don't see it there. I don't. My wife goes there, she doesn't see it there. I see it other place. I don't know what needs to be done, but it is truly troubling. And I think there's something that needs to be done. Monitoring better. I know we're understaffed in our police departments. That's very troubling in itself. We don't have enough response there. But I believe we need to put something in place to make safe roads and safe highways. And it doesn't expand itself even more, which I'm sure it probably has on 70, if you have senators out there or other areas. How can we address this properly so we can at least minimize this and help it out?
I just want to be clear, are you asking about the license plate distribution, or are you asking about just speed management?
I'm talking about people that drive like maniacs.
Yeah, okay. So there is a bill currently working through. It was a Senate-sponsored bill, but I think it's cross-filed now. I could get a verification on that. That would allow for additional speed monitoring on the Baltimore Beltway and I-83. We've worked with the bill sponsor.
I'm a co-sponsor, just to let you know.
Oh, okay. And sorry, there's too many of them to memorize all the sponsors, but we have worked to help improve, to make sure that legislation aligns well with SHA's practices. So we think that bill, certainly speed monitoring is a proven technology. One stat, federal highways seen that in urban contexts, speed monitoring can help reduce speeds and crashes by 54%. It works. In fact, there are 28, what's called 28 federal highway proven safety countermeasures. These are tools that if you utilize them, federal highway will help to pay for it, and you don't need any further approvals from them because the research has demonstrated that it is successful. Speed management through monitoring cameras is one example of those 28 proven safety countermeasures. There's other things that we're doing. We do have a great partnership with Maryland State Police. We work with them regularly, do some high visibility enforcement activities. We have had some challenges in rural areas with acceptance of the move over law. And so we've done some targeted high visibility enforcement events to help educate those that maybe aren't, at least allege that they don't know that that exists in Maryland. So we are working on those types of activities, and we've actually gotten some grants to help improve certain safety aspects. For example, we have a work zone grant that we received through the US DOT that will allow us to pilot and test drone technology for both monitoring speeds to help us know where there are issues and that possibly we could provide alerts through our dynamic messaging system, or use the drone technology to help boost our capabilities with speed monitoring and management. So there's a lot that's happening out there. There are things that we're working on. It is a tough issue coming out of COVID. As my remarks said, I think it's a cultural issue. Just if you can stand it a second, I just had my kids watch Despicable Me 4, and the opening scene in the movie, you see Gru whipping up the mountain back and forth, going 100 miles an hour. People think that they made 10 Fast and Furious movies for a reason. We need to help educate people that that's not cool. That leads to deaths and families without loved ones. And so we try every day with every avenue we possibly can, but there's more that we need to do.
And there is. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're going to put more monitors out there. They're going to watch us. Where's the privacy and thing? But at the same time, where's the safety? I believe that's the most important part. When I have my wife and the kids are in the car and they're driving, or any highway, it doesn't matter. You have family, you have your cousins, you have your neighbors, you have your friends. I mean, it involves everybody. All I want is just safer highways. And another, I'm sorry.
No, if I could follow up, I think, this is a really important dialogue in the forefront of safety and everything that we're talking about regarding, unsafe driving on our roadways and specifically on the interstates that you've mentioned. Anecdotally, we don't have a ton of data yet on, the new work zone, cameras, but I think that's certainly something that we'll be sure to come back to this body on and let you know how the tiered system, I know that's work zone specific and doesn't cover all of the areas of, the Beltway that you're mentioning, but I do want to thank the willingness of this body to consider these and giving, Administrator Pines and the department many of the tools in the toolbox. We're fortunate to have some of these tools in the toolbox that other states that we work with do not have. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And also, I will be back in front of this group on Monday along with Administrator Nizer from the MVA, and we can talk more at that point in time about some of the safety activities and work that her team is doing. We're about to start a new development of a new strategic highway safety plan, and that strategic highway safety plan is really the alignment between Will's team, Chrissy's team, MSP, and many other partners. And we go through this every few years, and I think the challenges that are in front of us in the development of this plan are more extreme than the challenges that were probably in front of us the last time we developed this plan. So these dialogues are very important and productive as we're, developing what we'll be taking on next.
I like the ongoing conversations, which we always need to have.
Yeah.
It's important to have these conversations because at times when you don't have them, there's a void. So we can't have that. We talked a little bit about our toll areas in 895 and 95. And I would love for us to still talk about that because you have areas where you have free and flowing traffic, where you have another area where you have to go through the toll, but it pays for that. So the opposite side, 50, you go across the bridge or JFK, you have an open area. It would be good if you can do the same thing in other areas where you have toll facilities, where you can go and freely go through, but the opposite side you're paying, or have the monitors overhead, which we've had at the time at the Key Bridge. So I think having some of those kind of things in that area could make the difference in flow of traffic. And if we can get that, we less congestion, and I think it would be benefit for us all. So I think this is an ongoing conversation that we had before. I think this is something we really need to look into. But I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Before I go to the senator from Frederick, I want to thank the agency as a whole for working with us. We like to be number one in a lot of things in our region, but not for the challenges that we have on Route 210 in Prince George's County, one of the worst highways in the country, for a number of reasons. One, it's dark down there. Two, the spacing of the lights, which are according to code or according to your standards, but folks take advantage of those things. And to take the first state highway to have, those monitors on there, seems like it's growing a number of suggestions for other pieces of our roadways that are out there, because there are pieces of other communities that are having these challenges. So it's something we all have to work pretty hard on. So Senator LaShawn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. When you were talking about replacing certain positions, you made a reference to being able to leverage federal funds with those positions. So this is a question we ask everyone that comes before us. What kind of communications, if any, are you getting from federal partners about the sustainability of those funding sources?
Do you want to start there, or do you want me to start there?
Sure. Broadly, we've been updating you as we've gone through the modes on where we are with our federal communications. I think that we are pretty much at a standstill from where we've been over the past few weeks. There has been some progress in trying to understand perhaps the timing of some of the federal reviews that are ongoing for different approvals that we typically seek through our division partners, specifically for State Highway through the Federal Highway Administration. What I think is helpful in those dialogues is, while some things are still under review, we are getting a flow of information on allowing us to better anticipate when we may see, some additional guidance coming. I think that's the thing that's a bit hard for us at this point, is the waiting for additional guidance part. But there are still lines of communication, and Administrator Pines can speak more in detail about some of the specific funds that we are continuing to pull down. And I think we're, an okay posture for right now, although no one loves uncertainty.
Cautiously optimistic.
Certainly.
Thank you. Well, okay,
Oh,
sorry.
I was going to just speak a little bit to the positions, actually, because it's a little bit separate issue from the federal landscape as we see it. So State Highway, we've done a lot of great work over the last several years to leverage more federal dollars, but there are certain asset classes for asset management that need additional efforts put into it to comply with federal requirements. So for example, if you don't have detailed inventory and inspection information, you're not allowed to have certain work considered preventative maintenance, and therefore it's not federally eligible. So with these positions, we can put the practices in place that will allow us to position each asset class to be federally eligible. That unlocks more federal money, less burden on the state. And so a small investment in people that's on the operating side will frankly have a significant impact on our capital side. Additionally, there's some program management positions. The landscape in the infrastructure, the IIJA bill that brought the federal funding, a significant portion of it is federal formula funds. These are funds that we kind of, I'll say, get no matter what, as long as we follow the processes correctly. However, there are a number of discretionary grant programs. Those discretionary grant programs are extremely challenging to administer. We have to have the applications, grant agreements are required. You have to have MOUs. Sometimes the counties win grants and you've got to go into agreements with them. And the size of the discretionary program within the last infrastructure bill was larger than before. That's purposeful. Legislators at the federal level can't fund everything. And so as a way to say, sorry, you didn't get everything you wanted, but here's this competitive thing you can go after. That program is getting larger. And so the burden on our staff to qualify for all of those grants is a big lift. And so again, a couple of positions will help us get more federal dollars.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. And in closing, I want to thank you for funding Route 15. I take every opportunity to do that. It runs right through the heart of my district. As you know, Frederick County is the fastest growing county in the state, and the city probably accounts for most of that growth. congestion has been a real challenge, and this helps us to keep infrastructure concurrent with growth. And that's probably a good segue to introduce my county executive.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. We will be in touch.
Thank you.
And we will move to, we have 7 witnesses, and as mentioned by Senator Lewis Young, our first witness to speak will be County Executive of Frederick County. I am familiar with Highway 15. My brother lived in Frederick, so you all are doing a great job up there. He's been up there since '95.
Oh, wow,
Yeah, he's
wonderful.
raised his family up there, so welcome.
Thank you
Madam
so
County
much.
Executive, and proceed when you're ready. Just state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, great.
Or however long.
Good afternoon, Chair Jackson. Thank you, Senator Lewis Young, for the introduction, and members of the Senate Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee. I'm very pleased to be here and have this opportunity to testify in support of the SHA budget today. And for the record, I am Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater. As you heard from Administrator Pines, the FY26 proposed budget includes planning and design funding for the US 15 Safety Improvement Project, with full construction funding in the Consolidated Transportation Program. And you do have in your packet of written testimony a joint letter from the Frederick County Council and myself in support of the proposed SHA budget and the inclusion of Route US 15 design and construction funding. And this is really just one example of the strong bipartisan support for this project. As my Senator Lewis Young knows, the US 15 Safety Improvement Project has been Frederick County's top transportation project for over a decade, receiving support from our bipartisan county council, our bipartisan state delegation, and all 12 of our municipalities. It truly is a regional project that impacts not just our county, but the entire region. This broad support is because this project not only addresses critical safety and quality of life needs, but also advances the state's economic development goals as it's a key corridor for interstate commerce. The safety needs of this section of highway are well documented, with this just over 2-mile stretch seeing a disproportionate number of vehicle accidents, including a tanker truck explosion in March of 2023, which many of you remember, which killed 1 individual and caused significant property damage along the Route 15. This project will also include sound barriers to protect the neighboring communities and provide much-needed traffic congestion relief. As I have been known to say before, it is pretty much always rush hour in this section of 15 and through the city. As Senator Lewis Young said, Frederick County is the fastest growing county in the state, and this growth is playing a key role in the state's economic prosperity. But we have to recognize that as we grow, investments in our infrastructure must also grow and improve. So I'm here today on behalf of my entire community to urge the committee to support the proposed SHA budget and the revenue measures needed to fund transportation investments across the state, including the US 15 Safety Project. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you very much.
And I am going to excuse myself to go testify on the BRFA across the street.
I was
so
about to say that. I know some folks need to get across the
when
street.
you see me leave, that's why.
And we'll probably see you tomorrow as well on our end. So,
Thank you so
Senator
much.
Young, you have any further?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, right.
Take care. Next up, we'll have Michelle Gordon, Washington County Commissioners. Welcome. Good luck across the street.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chair, respected committee members. I am Michelle Gordon, County Administrator for the Washington County Board of County Commissioners. The widening of Interstate 81 has been our county's top transportation project for over 25 years. In 1998, a quad state task force was formed to review I-81, and that task force included public and private officials from Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. This task force concluded that the widening of I-81 from Harrisonburg, Virginia to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania was essential for the safety of citizens and was the single most important infrastructure improvement needed for economic development in the region. Other states along I-81 have made progress towards achieving the goals established by the task force. West Virginia has completed or is in the process of completing the addition of 3 lanes over their 18-mile stretch. over 18 miles of their 26-mile stretch and has invested over $200 million. The Virginia General Assembly passed legislation in 2019 to secure $2 billion in funding for their 325-mile corridor. Pennsylvania has named several priority projects in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, which is the first county north of the Maryland line. New York has joined the efforts, and in 2022, New York pledged over $800 million to improve I-81. I-81 is only 12.5 miles long in Maryland, with all of it being located in Washington County. Funding for the continuation of Phase 2 is currently included in the fiscal year 26 capital plan. This funding is critical for this economic corridor along this national freight highway due to the construction of large warehouses and distribution sites in West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. COVID brought a shift from retail to e-commerce, and warehouse construction has grown exponentially in Washington County, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania due to the intersections of I-70 and I-81. Washington County alone has over 10 million square feet of new logistic warehouse space, and our neighboring states have the same or more. There are 10 interchanges along Maryland's 12-mile stretch where 20,000 trucks per day travel. We encourage you to support the funding proposed in SHA's fiscal year 26 budget for I-81. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for making the trip down.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have, let's go with Mike Sakata.
Chair Jackson, distinguished members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Michael Sakata, President and CEO of Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association. I serve as the leading voice for our state's transportation industry. Collectively, our 240 members and over 100,000 men and women in the state are represented by us. They literally have boots on the ground, repairing our crumbling roads, maintaining our aging transit lines, expanding our clogged highways, and building new bridges and pedestrian trails. It is on their behalf that I'm here today in strong support of State Highway Administration's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. I'm pleased to be joined by several members today that represent Maryland transportation firms of all sizes. We're also proud founding members of the Move Maryland Coalition. We believe the $473 million requested budget is a vital investment in lives. Currently, 49% of the roads and highways are in poor condition. 46% of our bridges are at least 50 years old. This budget addresses the infrastructure crisis that, left unaddressed, would place every safety of every Marylander at risk. Furthermore, the investment provided in this budget for pedestrian safety will ensure that sidewalks, trails, signals, and crosswalks will build in future years will not be done on the backs of heartbreaking fatalities. This budget is an investment in Maryland's economy. Our small businesses cannot survive. Our manufacturers cannot compete, and our data-driven economy will not flourish if we cannot connect products with market, consumers with businesses, and employees with their job sites. Finally, it's investment in quality of life that makes our state such a special place to call home. This budget, if approved, will make it far more possible for Marylanders to spend irretrievable time with their family, friends, and loved ones rather than sitting on traffic-choked highways. This budget is practical and outcome-driven with innovative and user-based revenue sources that will provide sustainable over the course of time. It is for these reasons I respectfully urge approval of State Highway Administration's budget and appreciate your consideration. 1 second.
Great job, young man. Great job. All right, you're welcome here anytime. Next up, Joe Corrin.
Can I use his extra second?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Chair Jackson, members of the committee. My name is John Corrin. I'm with Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, but today representing a broad coalition of advocacy groups from across the state of Maryland. We are also proud members of the Move Maryland Coalition in support of the governor's transportation budget. We are the voice of vulnerable road users, people who choose to walk, bike, or use other mobility devices to get around, and perhaps more importantly, for people who have no choice but to walk, bike, because that is their only affordable option. We must make it safe, and we fully embrace the commitments of MDOT and SHA to provide a safe, reliable, and accessible multimodal transportation system I will say that our relationship with both MDOT, SHA, and the other modal agencies is fantastic. The level of transparency, collaboration, sense of shared mission to these objectives is at an all-time high. So we are grateful for that. But at the same time, on Maryland roads last year, there were 570 plus people killed, and more than 40% of them were vulnerable road users traveling outside of a vehicle. Some of them have to travel along state roads, some have to cross state roads. And we are grateful for the programs aligned with Vision Zero, Complete Streets, the PSAP, Pedestrian Safety Program that Will mentioned. All these programs which help make it safer for everyone traveling. We would encourage you to make sure, do not be penny-wise, pound-foolish on operating budget. Federal funding is uncertainty. Everyone knows that. This is no time to take chances on securing federal funding to make our multimodal transportation system safe. So we ask you to approve the budget, and thank you for being here.
You took that 1 second.
Did I? I was hoping to pass it to the next one.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And thank you also for a couple of you all here today. Thank you all for the support of some of the legislation that in our partnership with the Department of Transportation.
Speed limits, yep.
Absolutely.
Yep, we're on it.
Thank you very much. Cheryl Court. Cheryl Court. Miguel Lambert. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Chair Jackson and members of the subcommittee, my name is Miguel Lambert, and I'm CEO of Bulldog Trucking based in Beltsville, Maryland. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today in support of this transportation bill. Bulldog Trucking specializes in supplying sand, gravel, and aggregates via a wide variety of dump trucks. We value customer service and provide safe, I'm going to triple down on safe, superior on-time delivery of quality aggregates and materials. With only one phone call, we deliver small to large quantities of aggregates within the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. Bulldog Trucking is a certified minority-owned business, disadvantaged business. We are a member of MTBMA and have long joined in calls to sustainably grow our transportation revenue source. This includes working with the Together for Transportation Funding Coalition as well as the MOVE Coalition. Bulldog Trucking fully supports Governor Moore's investments in our transportation system as we work together to position and grow our economy for workforce for the future. This investment is critical to ensure the success of our MBE, DBE firms, creating a level playing field for entrepreneurs of all backgrounds. This investment is particularly important to small, minority-owned firms that are just starting out as subcontractors. This will help to enable future wealth growth opportunities for Marylanders of all backgrounds. I urge your support of Governor Moore's budget proposal for SHA. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much.
15 seconds.
All right. He's welcome back as well. All right, our last speaker, Mike Voinis. Did I say that right?
You did, sir.
All right.
One of the few that actually pronounced it correctly. Good afternoon, Chair Jackson, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mike Voinis. I'm Senior Vice President with HNTB Corporation. HNTB is a national engineering and infrastructure solutions firm. I lead our capital region, including our office in downtown Baltimore. HNTB's capital region proudly employs more than 300 dedicated professionals, delivering some of our region's most critical infrastructure projects. With a legacy spanning of more than 110 years, HNTB provides services that address a wide spectrum of transportation challenges, including financing, legislation, planning, design, construction, community outreach, and ongoing operations. HNTB is proud to be a part of the MOVE Maryland Coalition, and we are an active member of the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association. The approval of the proposed SHA budget is absolutely critical. It addresses essential state of good repair needs and fully matches all federal formula and discretionary grant programs, which will ignite economic growth statewide. Funding these projects will enhance roadway safety and create thousands of high-paying jobs in the state and within the transportation industry. This budget enables companies like ours to expand our workforce by hiring even more talented Marylanders. It allows us to make additional investments in leasing additional office space, infusing more capital into the local economy, and contribute to the development of safer, more innovative infrastructure. When the transportation sector thrives, the entire community reaps the benefits. The approval of this budget is essential to support Maryland's thriving community through a sustainable infrastructure investment. We respectfully request your full support of this budget to move Maryland forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our hearing. Next up, we have the Uninsured Employers Fund. Thanks, Steve. We can get started when they clear out.
Good afternoon. My name is Micah Richards, and I want to thank the chair, the committee, and the great state of Maryland for allowing me to present before you today. I am presenting the Uninsured Employers Fund, referred to as UEF Fiscal 26 Budget Analysis. Starting on page 1, UEF protects workers whose employers are not insured under the Maryland Workers' Compensation Law. The fiscal 26 allowance increases by 1.7% to $6.1 million. Page 2, Exhibit 1 shows 58% of the fiscal 26 allowance supports medical service support provided by UEF. Page 3, Exhibit 2 shows the largest spending increase of around $124,000 is for salaries due to fiscal 25 cost of living adjustments. Page 4, as of December 2024, 2 positions have been vacant for more than 12 months. Page 5, Exhibit 3 shows the cost per resolved claim is on an upward trend, increasing by 160% from fiscal 21 to 24 due to UEF's third-party administrator, referred to as TPA contract. Corvell is the TPA. Page 6, Exhibit 4 shows the benefit payments increased by 31% in fiscal 24 compared to fiscal 23, which is the highest level since fiscal 20. Page 7, Exhibit 5 shows the expenditures exceeded the revenues in fiscal 23 and 24. Page 8, Exhibit 6 shows, starting in fiscal 22, the significant increase in administrative costs, which are payments to Corvell, is the primary cause of expenditures exceeding revenues. In the last 5 years, UEF paid Corvell a total of around $11.5 million. Corvell has secured $25 million in payments to UEF. The Board of Public Works approved on October 30th, 2024 for Corvell to remain as the TPA through October 31st, 2029. During this term, Corvell will receive $8.4 million. UEF expects for Corvell costs to decrease by 20%. UEF should comment on the need to retain Corvell and why the TPA's costs are expected to decrease. Page 9, the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report, referred to as JCR, requested for UEF and the Workers' Compensation Commission, referred to as WCC, to establish a work group to determine solutions for the long-term solvency of UEF. UEF and WCC's reports included multiple recommendations. First recommendation, have an overseer monitor UEF's administrative affairs. UEF should comment on the suggestion to utilize an overseer. Second recommendation, transfer claims management in-house. UEF wants an independent feasibility study to be conducted. Third recommendation, retain a private commission-based collections agency to pursue debts owed to UEF. UEF supports but prefers to also have the Central Collections Unit continue to collect debt. Fourth recommendation, UEF should seek to reduce fines, penalties, and assessments to judgments and bring civil collection actions. UEF supports. Fifth recommendation, increase the allowable assessments percentage on awards and settlements. UEF requested for Senate Bill 219, which proposes a 1 percentage point increase to the assessment. Sixth recommendation, make reserve setting mandatory. UEF opposes. Seventh recommendation, repeal the suspension of assessment once UEF's fund balance reaches $5 million. UEF supports. The eighth recommendation, redirect civil penalties from workplace fraud from the general fund to UEF. UEF supports. The ninth recommendation, transfer $10 million from the subsequent injury fund to UEF and readjust the assessment ratios. UEF supports. 10th recommendation, shift costs of UEF employees' salaries and benefits to the general fund. UEF supports. UEF should comment on the options considered in the two reports. Page 10. In addition to Senate Bill 219, UEF requested for Senate Bill 227 to be introduced to require WCC to make the fund a party to a claim filed against an uninsured employer. UEF should comment on the impact Senate Bill 227 will have on the fund balance. Page 11, DLS recommends for UEF to report on whether a TPA is needed for the entire current 5-year contract. This report should be submitted by December 1st, 2025. Page 12, the Office of Legislative Audits, referred to as OLA, will submit UEF's audit report during calendar 2025. Page 13. There were 2 JCR reports requested in the 2024 session. Work group report on UEF's long-term solvency was presented earlier in this presentation, and it is shown in key observation 2, pages 6 through 10 of this analysis. OLA still has several steps to perform before they submit their report on the status of corrective actions related to audit. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? No questions? Great to see you.
Always my pleasure to be before this subcommittee. Sincerely and genuinely thank Mr. Richards. What a pleasure to work with him. Professional, right to the point. When you have a small agency, your director is involved in many things that some of the other agencies you've heard today is not involved in. I'm intimately involved when it comes to responding to our legislative analyst. I get the emails, and if I don't know the answer, which is almost invariably the case, I'll have a CFO answer it. And it's a pleasure to work with Mr. Richards because he has a question, you answer it. If there's a follow-up, he asks it, you answer it, and it's done. He obviously knows what he's doing. He's obviously focused. He is extremely polite to work with. And I just wanted to thank him because it's an excellent analysis, and it's very helpful to me today in particular because I will be using it as an example of why there is no necessity whatsoever for any kind of a monitor czar to be running the uninsured employers fund today. But let's go through the budget first in a organized fashion, starting page 2, implementation of legislative priorities, the increase in penalties for failure to have workers' comp insurance from $10,000 to $25,000. Some of you may remember that idea was born in this room with this committee. That would be when the former chair, now Congresswoman Elfreth, was the chair, but it was this committee that gave me the idea to do it. And you requested a report from the UEF, which I was more than happy to do because it enabled me to obtain the information I needed to have the agency sponsor this bill and to present it to the legislature for successful enactment. I can tell you that the Workers' Comp Commission is beginning to issue fines above the $10,000 level. They're starting to come in. They have a new process that they initiated, and it being legal, it takes time to make sure you get legal processes correct. And I think sometimes that's not understood. I mean, all state agencies have to comply with the law, but when your function is legal, you've got to make sure that your ideas actually will work correctly. They won't violate anyone's rights. And so the commission took its time with doing that, which made perfect sense to do. So we are starting to get those fines today. The overview of spending, below that, you will see the amount for contractual services, which is $212,000 under the old contract with our third-party claims administrator, who is also known as Corvell, and I will refer to him that way, which equals the third-party claims administrator today. The new contract is less than that. The new contract is approximately $160,000 a month. You will also see, let me go down here, on page, hold on a second, please, not there. Where is it? There it is. All right. Page, I'm never going to get used to computers. Page 8, Exhibit 6. You'll notice that in fiscal 19, 20, and 21, the amount of administrative costs was about $2 million. Then in 22, it goes up to 4. 23, it goes up to 4.9 or something. And at 23, and then 24, it's about 4.8. The prior administration, originally, this agency separated administrative costs from the cost for the contract. So DBM under the prior administration insisted that we lump them together. So that's the reason that between 21 and 22, they got lumped together. So that includes what my staff and I get paid, and it includes the amounts that go for the TPA contract. So it doubled, and that's why. And I just wanted to make a point of that because it does, as often is the case, sometimes when charts are looked at and they're not explained, they don't really make sense to people. And I wanted to make sure that that was understood. As we continue, the cost for claims are increasing because we're not, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I fall in the category of not understanding it. So you're saying that in 2021, there were 2 buckets of costs?
Yes, yes, sir.
And which bucket is in the 21 chart, the green?
The 21 chart is the UEF staff bucket.
And then the 2022 is the staff bucket plus what?
It is plus the cost, the administrative cost of hiring the TPA to do its services.
The TPA?
How much we pay them to do the work.
Were they working for you in 2021?
Yes.
So this one I'm not really following. So why would they not show up on this chart? I mean, maybe I don't understand that.
That's an entirely rational question. If you go to the MFR, you will see for 21 2 items. One is whatever the MFR calls paying for staff at the agency.
I'm sorry, what is the MFR?
Managing for results, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
That's our managing for results that we prepare every year.
I know the word.
So that has one amount, and then there's an amount for the cost of the contract for the TPA. And DBM didn't want us to do that. And in fact, it involved legislative staff too, I believe. It's kind of hazy because we kept trying to get it changed at DBM, and the Hogan administration's people never seemed to change it. And we'd come to these hearings, these budget hearings, and the staff would be, why haven't you done that? And I'd be like, we've been trying to. So it finally got accomplished, and that's how it got to be that way.
So for the purpose of this chart, and this is, I mean, the source is you guys, but DLS created this chart? How should I do, whose chart
Yes,
is
this is the, from the,
I created this chart based on the data from the report from, that UEF submitted from the work group.
right.
From the work group?
Yes.
Okay. So the source isn't the fund, it's really the work group?
Well, no, it was, this data comes from UEF.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is if in 2019, 20, and 2021, there were other costs that don't show up in this chart, I'm trying to understand, that's because DBM said not to put the,
No, the agency made a determination that, my CFO advised us to do this, that the cost of the contract and the cost of paying salaries and benefits, because we're an entirely 100% self-funded agency that does that, should be separate.
and I said,
But DBM decided they wanted it together, so that's why it got together.
that's the 2022.
Correct, yes, sir.
But for the reasons you were describing, the chart is not apples to apples.
No.
Okay. That's the point you're making, but I'm just curious.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I am sorry about that. Yes, that's correct.
Thank
No,
you.
but that's from, the record keeping was changed. And in fact, if you look at the actual managing for results, there's a footnote that states what I just told you.
I see. Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it was a bureaucratic order, so we complied with it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm sorry it's confusing. All right. Well, let us continue to go through this. We should talk about the work group at this point. Those of you who were here last year will recall the work group was actually born in this room. It was, again, you may recall that the chair and I engaged in a back and forth because I thanked you all for asking for a report from our agency, and the chair noted that that was not usually a response they would get from an agency. And but I told her I was very, very grateful you'd all done that, and I really was, because as I said, it gave me an opportunity to really prepare, frankly, what was going to be testimony for a bill, and to know that the issue cold. So it was very beneficial. So we were talking about the issue of the fund solvency and the balance, which you all recognize and have recognized over the years is an issue. And the chair suggested that perhaps we would do a work group and we would look at funding options and the operations and come back with a report. And I was all for it. And I envisioned that it would be a similar exercise to the prior year's report, which was, except involving people this time, but I imagine that basically we would do the research, I would draft something up, the work group would go over it, and that's what we would get. In fact, and I will leave him to add any comment to this, Senator Rosapep was kind enough the day of the budget hearing to volunteer to assist with that. And he was a member of the work group, which I thank you very much, Senator, for that. When I got the JCR, it had expanded into a joint work group between the chair of the WCC and the director of the UEF, with a whole group of people that frankly, no one had run by me. I had no idea who these, where this came from. But having been a delegate, I understand that is not so unique around here. So I was happy to just go, okay, well, we'll go with this. And that's how the work group got constituted. That was not quite what we envisioned, but that's how it got constituted. And then, as you can see, and those of you who have read the two reports will certainly see, the work group, frankly, did not turn out the way I had envisioned or I had hoped. Apparently, some members of the work group had a different view of what they were supposed to do. I will note, for the record, for you all, that in the JCR, emphasized in bold was that particular emphasis was to be placed on revenue options to increase the revenue of the uninsured employers fund. Well, at the September 5th meeting of that work group, I was told by the co-chair that the agency had an expenditure problem, not a revenue problem. And also that what we needed to do was look at expenditures and not revenue. And that was the way we were going to do it. I attempted to explain that we really didn't, it was a revenue problem, and it is. If you read the work group report, and today I can certainly go through our analysis on that. It's in the testimony again. The revenue, the issue is that the assessments from the commission the last 2 years, fiscal years, are down by $2.4 million. And the fund's balance is down by about $2.4 million. And that is not a fault thing. That is not a commission has done something wrong thing. That is simply the way it's gone. The commission has issued lesser assessments or lesser orders and payments, and that's just the way it is because these are all unique cases. You cannot really predict from year to year what's going to come in, what you're going to have to pay out, what the claims are going to be at the commission level, and so that's just the way it is, but that process continues, and hence the reason for Senate Bill 219 this year, which is to increase the assessment by 1%. However, at that meeting on September 5th, we were told that this was an issue that involved the funding, not the funding, but the expenditures of the UEF. So I tried to explain the benefits, and I will jump ahead. I'm happy to do another study for you all about why the TPA model makes sense. We did it in 21, I think. The same study, I will do a new one. We will do a new one. I'm always happy to comply with the request for information because obviously the more information you have, the better decision making you have. So I tried to explain that, and one of the work group members sarcastically asked me if I actually, our TPA's Corval, sarcastically asked me if I worked for the Corval Corporation because I was explaining their benefits, and we've had an emergency procurement, 2 RFPs. Corval was the emergency procuree, I guess, the contract we brought. Then we did an RFP process in 2019, which I was on the evaluation committee, and the evaluation committee, which included representatives of the Subsequent Injury Fund, the Workers' Compensation Commission, myself, and of course the procurement officer, unanimously recommended Corval for a 5-year contract. We just got done another RFP process in October, where, as you note, that Mr. Richards, that the Board of Public Works approved the contract without discussion for another 5-year term. And I will tell you, amongst my many travels, I'm a former member of and the chairman of the Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals. So I understand how procurement works and what's supposed to be done. And so when we revised the contract, we did exactly what your system is supposed to do, which is you take the data from the prior contract and you completely review it and you redo how the contract is set up so it more accurately reflects what you need done and hopefully how many people you do it, which has resulted in a different contract, but it's also resulted in a 20% decrease in the Corval Corporation's administrative fee. That's what they charge us to do the work. Everything else goes out to the injured workers somehow, but that is down by 20%, which works out to be about $1.6 million a year. And this is, I'll cheat because you're going to read this again in the report I give you, but this is easy to tell you. One of the work group members, the representative for Chesapeake Insurance, estimated that it would cost $125,000 a person for state employees for salaries and benefits to do the work that we have done if we brought it in-house. If you take the fact it's going to take at least 12 people to do that in-house and do the math, which even I can do on this one, 12 times $125,000 is $1.5 million. So before you get anywhere else, before you go anywhere else with this, you should know that you're paying $1.68 million to a national company to do everything now. And it will cost you at least $1.5 million to bring it in-house for salaries and benefits, according to Chesapeake Insurance. So I would suggest that perhaps this is not the best bargain we've ever had. I will also note for the record and for this committee that in 2015, this agency was a total disaster, just total mess. But the agency was attempting to fix the whole claims system. So a representative of the Workers' Compensation Commission was brought in to help. And the agency staff was looking to, well, should we bring this in-house or should we hire somebody? And the Workers' Compensation Commission representative told my staff in 2015, you had to have a national TPA. This cannot be done in-house. It cannot possibly be done that way and work. So when you get the report from us in November, you will have some knowledge that others seeing it will not see it. It's a great deal. I'll simply say this, and I'll say it again. I've been doing this for 8 years plus. The single smartest thing we did was hire a national TPA. It impacts everything we do. It makes everything work better. It is a bargain. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't pay Corval. We make money off of them. And I could sit and explain it to you, but wait for the report. They make us money. They make us money. We have more money in the bank, in our fund, because we've hired them than if we'd done it in-house. It is a bargain for this state. It is a process that has been gone through several times in the RFP system, and they always win because they're the best, okay? That's why they win these contracts. And so that, but I emphasize, we will be more than happy to produce your report for you, absolutely. And we're always looking to do that. Now let's talk about the issue of the monitor, or monitor czar as I refer to it. You know, we all sat here and we heard the DPSCS people talking about their budget, and the analysts did the recommendations. 5 issues, 9 recommended actions, reports that haven't been filed, all that sort of thing. And I will tell you, because of what we're here to talk about for this agency today, what popped into my head is, yet no one seems to suggest the need for a monitor czar to oversee DPSCS, do they? And you know why that is? Because there's no need for it. Do you know why? That's why we're here today. You monitor DPSCS. You monitor the UEF. I come here every year. I speak to you. The budget analyst does a budget analyst every year. If there are questions, we deal with them. If you need reports, you ask for them. You get a year by year by year description of what's going on. And the Appropriations Committee does the same thing. I'm going there Monday. Same thing. Mr. Richards will be joining me there. We will see what they have to say. We have a board, which is appointed by the governor, confirmed by you senators, that oversees the agency. So they monitor how we function. As the director of the agency, by the statute, I basically run the agency. I do it on a day-to-day basis. I monitor the agency as well. So you've got the governor, you've got the governor's staff, you've got yourselves, you've got the Appropriations Committee, and of course, I cannot forget your Office of Legislative Audits, which comes every 4 years. We are concluding my 3rd audit with the OLA as the director. This is my 5th audit that I've actually been an agency head for. And I'm sure you realize that your Office of Legislative Audits is the most thorough, painstaking, detail-oriented people you will ever find. So when you get a report from them about this agency, you will certainly get a report that tells you where the agency is, and they're concluding it now, and you will see it in the next couple of months. So the question becomes, why do you need a monitor? All right, this idea has been floated by members of the work group, only a few, but members of the work group for months and months and months and months. So why? Why do you need it? I will let others discuss that, but I will tell you this, if you're going to do this. As the director of this agency, as a lawyer and a former administrative law judge, I have serious questions about the statute that you now want me to function as your director of an agency under, with some outside person appointed to run the agency, as far as I know. I'm not quite sure what they're designed to do. You have a board, which is by law the governing body of the agency. I am the director. I work for the board in the penumbra of being a state employee, answering to the governor and to you all. That's what I do. Having said that, what happens when your czar tells me to do one thing and the board says do something else? Could you all advise me how I'm supposed to handle that? For example, it's suggested by the advocates that they have a say over staffing of state employees in a state agency. Some outside person who's not a state employee has no actual knowledge of how the agency's funded at all and how it operates is going to be ordering staffing. Well, suppose I, as the director, have an issue with that. Am I empowered under the statute to ignore that? What about the board? If they tell me not to do it, are they empowered by the statute to do that? I mean, who is this person and why is this person coming in from the outside? The suggestion I have received is that this person be a former commissioner on the Workers' Compensation Commission who retired many years ago and apparently lives out of state. Well, as I mentioned to you, I was an administrative law judge, okay? I handled 35, 40 different subject matters for the Office of Administrative Hearings. For example, talking about DPSC, I used to do inmate grievance office cases, which were cases involving DPSC. Inmates would file grievances, we would hear them and render decisions. And I did a fair number of those. Everybody does at the OAH. You'd have anywhere from maybe 1 or 2 to 5 or 6 in a hearing, and we would do them fairly frequently. So I did a fair number of those. So I learned a lot about DPSC doing that. Another subject matter we all do a lot of cases on is the Motor Vehicle Administration. We hear dockets very often, and they are anywhere from 8 to 15 cases a day. I have heard hundreds, if not thousands, of MVA cases, okay? I've heard a lot of cases about that. Probably more cases about the MVA than this former commissioner's heard about the Uninsured Employers Fund. But I will tell you, that doesn't mean I know how to run the MVA. I have no idea how to administer the MVA. I can tell you my subject matter, okay? I can tell you that, but I can't tell you that. So I use this word advisedly. I beg you not to do that to us, please. It is pointless and useless. Wait for your audit. If you've got issues, we will respond to them. But do not hamstring this agency anymore by doing that. I'll quickly go over the proposed legislation. Senate Bill 219 is to increase, that's a work group kind of result, sort of. It's to increase the fund balance by 1% optionally if needed. There's been a lot of discussion about that. The administration, the House Workers' Compensation Commission, House Workers' Compensation Economic Matters Committee Sub-Chair Delegate Harrison, who was also on the work group, and Senate Finance apparently, and this agency have all agreed that that should be a 0.5%. I think that's what's going to be presented to you all. It's a wonderful compromise. We're very grateful for that. Senate Bill 227 is it's a total rewrite of 91-002 of Labor and Employment entitled How the UEF Pays, because it's a dysfunctional mess now. It's such a mess that's basically parts of it are ignored because it doesn't work. It can't work. So my attorney generals really wanted to take a shot at fixing it. That's what the bill does, hopefully. It makes it in English. Injured workers will get paid quicker and easier if that bill passes. And that's what it does. So if it does come over, I would urge a favorable recommendation about that. And I think that's everything I have, unless there are any questions.
All right, questions or comments? Anyone? Thank you very much.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I will comment. I served on the work group.
Yes, sir.
And became more familiar with these issues than I wish I had. I basically agree with the gentleman's points that the issue that we've dealt with in the committee over recent years about there's not enough sustainable long-term funding is right, and so I'm glad to see the legislation is moving forward. I don't have an informed opinion about contracting out versus not contracting out, but listening to both sides of the argument during the work group, there was no obvious reason why bringing it in-house seemed to make any more sense, and particularly in the context of when we're having trouble hiring people in the state government in general. And this is a specialized task, and if they've gone through a legitimate RFP process, which there's no reason to believe they haven't, it seems to me the burden of proof is very much on the other side of the argument. And I also agree with him on the oversight issue. And I say this with great respect for such a small agency, in the sense that it's a little bit like a small business, in the sense that the folks closest to the ground and to the customers where I think the action is. And so I just want to say I generally agree with his comments.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure, good. Got it.
All right. I just want to just make this one note. That it was also stated to the Finance Committee earlier this week. So the original projection where UEF would be considered insolvent was fiscal 2030. But DLS now sees that our updated projection is that UEF will be insolvent by fiscal 2026 if change is not made.
Yeah, I think that's entirely, I'm not a math guy, but I think Mr. Richards is absolutely right. We cannot, look, we take the clients we get and we pay what we pay. It's not an insurance company, but I think he's absolutely right about that. I agree with that assessment, frankly.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Anyone else? All right.
Thank you all very much for your time. It's always a pleasure coming here.
All right. Good luck across the street.
Chairman Lewis is also a very reasonable man.
They have the budget first, so this year. All right. Next up, we will have the Office of our Public Defender, and our analyst will get us started. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Jacob Polico for the Department of Legislative Services with the budget analysis for the Office of the Public Defender. Just a refresher, the Office of the Public Defender provides counsel and related services to indigent persons through 12 district operations, 4 divisions, and 2 specialized units. As defined in the Code of Maryland regulations, indigent means any person taken into custody or charged with a serious crime who under oath or affirmation subscribes and states in writing that he is financially unable, without undue hardship, to provide for the full payment of an attorney and all other necessary expenses of legal representation. Legal representation is provided in criminal trials, bail reviews, appeals, juvenile cases, post-conviction proceedings, parole and probation revocations, and involuntary commitments to mental institutions. The fiscal 2026 budget for the office increases by $9.3 million. That's a 5.9% increase to $166.2 million total, mostly general funds. General funds increased by $9.4 million, or 6.1% in fiscal 26, as compared to last year's appropriation. This increase is largely attributable to the creation of 51 new positions, along with various other expenses, which have increased to align with fiscal 2024 actual expenses. The fiscal 2026 budget includes 1 proposed deficiency appropriation fiscal 2025 to fund fiscal 2024 shortfalls in the amount of $2.2 million in general funds. Excluding this proposed deficiency appropriation, general funds increased between fiscal 25 and 26 by approximately $11.5 million. In fiscal 2025, on page 2, we have a combined section for cost containment along with the implementation of legislative priorities. Section 21 of the fiscal 2025 budget bill added $500,000 in general funds to OPD to increase salaries for existing positions. The salary increases were intended to promote the agency's employee retention rates to reduce longstanding issues with higher than budgeted vacancy rates. In July of 2024, the Board of Public Works approved 1 cost containment action impacting OPD. That action reduced the agency's appropriation by about $1.1 million in general funds appropriated for salary increases for existing staff as a retention initiative, and that included the $500,000 which had been added by the General Assembly for that purpose. Again, at fiscal 2024 closeout, OPD reported having insufficient appropriations to cover about $2.2 million in expenditures. There's, as I mentioned, a proposed deficiency appropriation for fiscal 2025 to cover those shortfalls. Of that appropriation, $1.28 million is to provide additional funding for panel attorneys and medical consultants for legal consultations and testimony. The remaining $932,973 is added to provide additional funding for printing contracts, transcription services, and other contract services. As we see in Exhibit 1 on page 3, the total allowance for fiscal 2026 totals $166.2 million. 81% of that funding, or about $135.3 million, funds the District Operations Program. That program contains most of the agency's assistant public defenders, APDs, and is responsible for the majority of representation provided by the agency. As we see in Exhibit 2 on page 4, as I noted, the fiscal 26 allowance increases by $9.3 million compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriation. The largest change is $7.8 million for fiscal 2025 statewide salary adjustments that are budgeted in the Department of Budget and Management in fiscal 2025, but are in this agency's budget in fiscal 26. The fiscal 26 allowance includes $5.2 million in funding related to salary and fringe benefit costs for new positions and to provide additional office furniture along with new laptops for employees and trainings for new employees. On page 5, we have a brief discussion of funding for panel attorneys, which is potentially insufficient. Panel attorneys paid by OPD provide representation for clients when OPD's attorneys are not able to do so, and sometimes they're not able to do so for a variety of reasons. Those include conflicts of interest or just the fact that there's not enough attorneys for the number of cases that OPD needs to represent defendants in. As we see in Exhibit 3 on page 6, fiscal 2023 actual costs for panel attorneys were reported as $11.4 million, and OPD required an additional $1.8 million to fully fund costs for panel attorneys. In fiscal 2024, OPD reported actual expenses of $12.1 million for panel attorneys, and a deficiency appropriation for the same purpose in fiscal 2024 increases the total cost to $13.4 million. Despite these additional expenditures, the fiscal 2026 allowance actually decreases the amount budgeted for panel attorneys. However, both the fiscal 2025 and 2026 budget amounts are notably lower than the recent expenditures. And in that Exhibit 3 on page 6, the blue is what actually appears in the budget. The red is the amount later added via deficiency to reach the total amount for the actual cost in that year. Given the agency's recent history of requiring additional funding to pay for shortfalls related to panel attorney fees, the fiscal 2025 working appropriation and fiscal 26 allowance may require additional funding for that purpose. The total cost for panel attorneys grew by 2% between fiscal 23 and 24. If these costs continue to increase at the same rate each year, the fiscal 25 working appropriation could be underfunded by $1.1 million, and fiscal 26 may be underfunded by as much as $2.9 million. OPD should discuss the reason for the lower funding in fiscal 25 and 26 for this purpose compared to recent actual experience and how it would cover any shortfalls in this spending. On page 7, we have our personnel data, which shows 51 new positions in fiscal 26 for OPD. That includes 26 contractual conversions and a net decrease of 5.5 contractual FTEs. Fiscal 26 includes new positions for all 4 of OPD's programs, including 16 APDs, 11 secretaries, 9 office clerks, 5 intake specialists, 2 social workers, and 2 paralegals, which are added for the district operations program. The additional secretaries and clerks directly support the new APD positions. The fiscal 26 allowance, as I noted, includes 5.5 fewer contractual positions than the fiscal 25 working appropriation. OPD is elected to eliminate those positions due to a lack of current need. The positions were 1 assistant public defender, 1 peer recovery specialist, 2.5 social workers, and a part-time office secretary position, along with a part-time family services caseworker. OPD has had consistently high vacancy rates for several years, and of the 80.5 current vacancies, 31 of those vacancies were created with the fiscal 2025 appropriation and have not yet been filled, including 12 APD positions and 9 secretaries. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the existing vacancies broken down by the length of time for which the vacancies existed. While the total number of vacancies at OPD has decreased over the past 12 months, the agency's difficulty with filling newly created positions serves to increase the severity of the vacancy problem. Of the 51 new positions added in the allowance, these include positions for which there are already a high number of vacancies, including APDs, social workers, paralegals, and administrative staff, as we see in Exhibit 5 on page 9. OPD's vacancy issues contribute to the caseloads issue, which we'll discuss in a moment. When attorneys leave OPD, they cite a variety of reasons, including higher rates of pay or lower caseloads available in other state agencies, federal agencies, or the private sector. OPD has historically filled higher level positions by promoting from within. This method of filling a vacancy by creating a new lower-level vacancy allows for OPD to hire a greater number of applicants for entry-level positions. However, previously the agency has stated that they've often failed to recruit graduating law students due to competition from other employers, which I previously mentioned. This results in continued issues with vacancies, particularly for APD positions, which the agency sorely needs. Data provided by the agency demonstrates the need for additional attorneys, paralegals, and social workers. However, their struggles to fill vacancies make it prudent to reduce the number of new positions in other job categories. Therefore, the Department of Legislative Services recommends reducing $1,697,000 in general funds and deleting 12 new office secretary positions, 9 new office clerk positions, 2 new administrative positions, and 2 new information technology related positions. On page 10, we have Exhibit 6, which shows the Office of the Public Defender's case statistics by category. OPD's had a fairly static caseload over the most recent 4 fiscal years, excluding cases that were handled by panel attorneys in each year between fiscal 21 and 24. The agency handled between 122,351 to 127,660 total cases each year. 69.4% of the cases in fiscal 24 were district court misdemeanors. This represents a statistically normal year for OPD, as district court misdemeanors have historically been the largest practice area each year. The consistent number of cases each year has allowed OPD to determine which divisions are in need of more attorneys to bring caseloads within standards for every attorney. The decreased number of cases over the last 4 years as compared to prior years has allowed OPD to decrease its usage of panel attorneys, which reduces the total amount of fees that the state pays to private attorneys to cover the cases that OPD is unable to handle. In calendar 2019, OPD needed to panel a total of 54,417 cases to private attorneys. In fiscal 24, panel attorney usage had decreased to just 12,193 cases. OPD should continue to work to balance the workloads for regular and contractual APDs to ensure that the use of panel attorneys is kept as low as possible in order to stay within the funds budgeted in the allowance for those attorneys and potentially avoid the problems seen in previous years with shortfalls which have required later deficiency funding. Additionally, we have on page 11 a conversation of attorney caseloads, which have remained a focus and continue to exceed current standards. OPD changed the standards they used to calculate caseload standards in fiscal 2024. These standards were calculated by a group consisting of multiple organizations, including the American Bar Association and the RAND Corporation, along with the National Center for State Courts, to calculate standard workloads for attorneys. OPD is now in the middle of a process to alter these standards to better reflect circumstances specific to Maryland, which will in turn better reflect appropriate caseloads for the agency's public defenders. OPD solicited proposals for a contractor to assist with the process of altering the national standards, and the contract was awarded to the RAND Corporation, who I mentioned worked on the original national standards currently being used, and was approved by the Board of Public Works at the November 20th, 2024 meeting. Until the adjusted standards are approved by OPD and adopted for use in the agency's annual Managing for Results submission, the agency is continuing to use the national standards. OPD currently anticipates that the adjusted standards will be completed by February of 2026. In December 24, OPD submitted a report on attorney hiring, separation, and caseloads, as last year's Joint Chairman's report requested. The report highlighted that OPD is understaffed in terms of attorneys, paralegals, and social workers. The caseloads issue is further exacerbated by OPD's difficulty in retaining attorneys. The report showed that in fiscal 2024, OPD lost 45 attorneys to resignation, 9 to retirement, and 13 to transfers, while 1 attorney was terminated. These 68 attorneys lost were replaced by 104 hired attorneys, making fiscal 2024 the first year since fiscal 2020 where more attorneys were hired than separated from OPD. The data contained in the fiscal 26 MFR submission indicates that with the current total number of budgeted APD positions, including vacancies, OPD is understaffed for its current workload by approximately 1,025 attorneys, as we see in Exhibit 7, which can be found on page 12. The area with the greatest calculated need is circuit court felony matters, where OPD estimates a need for 792 additional attorneys in order for each attorney to have an appropriate caseload. This calculated need represents an increase from the estimate provided for fiscal 2025, when OPD estimated 677 additional attorneys were needed for that specific practice area. The data indicates that OPD is understaffed in every practice area, with the exception being mental health matters. The gap between the number of attorneys OPD has versus what's needed according to standards represents a significant issue as current workloads are unsustainable for many attorneys, which can lead to low employee morale, high turnover, and, as we've seen, extensive use of panel attorneys, along with other consequences. OPD should continue to focus on enhancing its recruitment and retention methods, as filling vacant positions would decrease caseloads for all attorneys and has the potential to aid in retention efforts, even absent additional positions. OPD should comment on which case types the new APD positions created in the fiscal 2026 allowance will be assigned to, and if these assignments will result in standard caseloads for any of the case types where attorneys do not currently have standard caseloads. During the process of adjusting the national caseload standards to better reflect Maryland, the agency should continue to work to determine if procedures can be adjusted to reduce the number of additional attorneys needed for every attorney to have a caseload that meets standards. Procedures which could be examined may include how administrative staff and paralegals contribute to casework and whether different cases can be weighted differently in workload calculations based on complexity. On page 13, we have 2 recommended actions for the operating budget. The first is to reduce just over $94,000 in general funds, which were made for the purpose of increasing the turnover expectancy for contractual positions to 10%. The second is the previously mentioned reduction in general funds and positions to reduce a total of 26 new positions and just under $1.7 million in general funds. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No questions?
Good afternoon, Chair Jackson, members of the committee. I am Natasha Darty, Public Defender. Seated to my right is Deputy Public Defender Keith Lottridge, and to my left, Chief Financial Officer Thaddeus Hubbard. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the FY26 budget for the Office of the Public Defender and to respond to DLS FY26 budget analysis. Let me first recognize and thank our analyst, Jacob Palikov, for his thorough and insightful analysis. And I also want to take an extra moment to highlight his high level of professionalism and his responsiveness, especially when we had numerous questions. This was tremendously helpful to us in the process, so thank you. I'll start off by saying that in partnership with DBM, OPD senior administration staff had successfully advocated for additional new PINs in the government's allowance for FY26. The number represents only a partial phase build to meeting our staff requirements. So I am thankful to DBM for the work that they did in helping to move OPD forward despite these challenging times. My request today of the committee is to approve the FY26 budget as presented by the governor through DBM, make no reductions and no cuts. Now, this is not an unreasonable ask. The severity of the needs of the Office of the Public Defender were thoroughly considered in the budget that was presented. I thank Governor Moore and DBM for continually recognizing that OPD plays a critical role in the state, and we play a function that no other agency can or does perform. We stand side by side with Maryland's every day. We provide advocacy for the parent facing the loss of a child and in need of services, for example, in Baltimore County. We provide advocacy for the 30-year-old man who is in need of mental health in crisis in Frederick. We provide advocacy and support for the young woman in need of diversion in Prince George's County. When we speak about the needs of the Office of the Public Defender, we are directly reflecting the needs of the individuals that we serve and the constitutional mandates that our representation requires and our services that are given throughout the state. We are a value on the investment, and any reduction would be extremely harmful not only to the Office of the Public Defender, its employees, but the communities. We offer expertise and investment beyond the courtroom. We are subject matter experts. We provide and collaborate with local partners in addressing systemic problems. We also build and reinforce connections between our clients and various community partners. However, OPD is in fact in crisis. The staff additions that were reflected in the FY26 budget are urgently needed. And when I speak of urgency, allow me to provide you a visual. I want you to think of the game Jenga. Now, you think about Jenga, and every piece is stacked. Every move is a gamble. We think about the loss of a secretary, the loss of IT, low wages, a high workload. When you think about how fragile it gets as we take away resources, but as we add in terms of caseloads and complexity, this is what a poorly funded indigent defense looks like. It is unstable, it is risky, it is at the verge of collapse. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about the impact of lives, the lives of the clients that we serve, but what is equally important, the lives of the employees who are public servants doing extremely difficult work at the Office of the Public Defender. Now I want you to think and picture Legos. Legos, colorful, reliable, built to last. This represents our prosecutors' offices. Now, when each block is reinforced with funding and support, and let's say we take off a couple off the top, it still remains relatively sturdy. And I also want you to look at the colors in the blocks, because those are an important representation. Unlike the Office of the Public Defender that receives its main funding from the state, our local prosecutors' offices throughout the state receive funding not only from their local jurisdictions, but also the state of Maryland. In the representation of the Public Defender's Office, it is a solid color because our funding is mainly from the state. We do not receive any additional funding from any of the 23 jurisdictions or Baltimore City, even though we have 52 offices throughout the state. Now, notwithstanding the visual, nothing in the day-to-day operations of the Office of the Public Defender is a game. Not recruitment, not retention, not the repercussions that come from under-resourcing. OPD continues to use a multifaceted approach to filling our existing vacancies. As of January 31st, 2025, there were 41.5 attorney vacancies. This is a 6.7 vacancy rate. Our core staff vacancy rate is 10.03%, which is essentially an overall combined 8% vacancy rate. Last year, when I sat before you, the attorney vacancy rate was 13.75%. OPD has continued to tackle the problem, and part of the problem is that people are leaving to do public interest work in other places for more money and a lighter workload. Excessive workloads do in fact continue to contribute greatly to attorney and core staff turnover. It is extremely problematic for OPD when we lose our more seasoned attorneys who are in the circuit court and they handle our more serious cases, the felonies. The 25 positions in particular in FY25 budget represents a strategic investment in OPD. I want to emphasize also that our core staff are essential workers. Our paralegals, our social workers, our secretary, our intake workers. The efficiency and the effectiveness of our operation rests squarely on the quality of their work. OPD attorneys carry an excessive workload. Our cases are essentially getting more and more challenging in that they require more time, they're more time intensive. You think about the increased use of body cam. They require greater levels of legal expertise. Think about cell phone triangulation. They require more technical administrative support as we have moved to electronic filing and electronic discovery. Also, the additional costs in terms of end additional expert services that are needed. You think about the coordination, especially when we talk about DNA, for example. The excessive workloads reverberate through issues of recruitment, retention, and compensation, as well as morale. We are currently looking into criminal defense tools to help reduce and reimagine the essential tasks, such as in analysis of evidence, as well as in trial preparation. We are currently drafting our AI policy. Our forensics division has developed, and we have established a schedule of educational programs that will speak to the ethical and practical challenges also that are inherent in this emerging technology. Understaffing continues to affect morale, job satisfaction, and the quality of representation. As was stated, the National Workload Study that was released in September 2023 helps paint a clearer picture. For OPD, there is lack in all areas of all practice areas. The total number of attorneys alone that would be needed to come close to satisfying the requirement as explained in the National Workload Study would need to rise to 920. OPD currently has 606 authorized positions. As of today, we have approximately 575 attorneys. Additional resources are in fact needed. And I cannot lose this opportunity to emphasize again that we must better compensate all our employees in order to recruit, retain, and provide the superior legal representation as required of us, but most importantly, as our clients deserve. As the leader of the Maryland Office of the Public Defender, I lead an incredible team of talented, dedicated, and resilient public servants. OPD's value to Maryland warrants significantly more than I have asked for today. It is, and I do so with the full understanding of the current fiscal climate. So this is why I seek approval of the FY26 budget as presented by the governor's allowance, and I urge that no cuts be made. OPD defends individuals, solidifies families. Families are the backbone of our communities, and I speak about communities from the mountains to the shore and every city and town in between. The value of investment in OPD is ensuring justice, fairness, and dignity for all people in Maryland. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome questions.
Thank you very much. Before I go around the table, quick question for you. If you could repeat the numbers for me again. You have 606 attorneys currently?
My available, I'm sorry, excuse me a second. What I report is that I currently have 606 authorized positions. Okay. And today we have approximately 575 attorneys.
575. You mentioned earlier like 920, is that total staff needed?
So if I were to get to the point to be in line with what was presented in the workload study in September of 2022, I would need the number to rise from 606 to 920.
Okay, that's the workload. All right, and how about your other staff members?
I'm sorry, what is this?
Your paralegals and others, the other staff members other than the attorneys. The breakdown.
So my current number of core staff is 369.
The retention of those members, I know we've spoken about the challenge of keeping the attorneys, the challenge of keeping those core, other core employees.
So what I can say, as of January 31st of 2025, my core staff vacancy is 10.03%. That is 37 core staff vacancies. Last year at this time, my core staff rate was 8.78%. I'm sorry, yes, my core staff rate was 8.78%.
So that increase is due to, do you believe you can replace those individuals? Or, so sometimes when the reports come out, we're at a certain point. So are you in the process of hiring more core employees?
So we are in the process of recruitment, but in terms of the core staff, those positions were released to us later in the year 2024. So that impacted our ability to fill them and how quickly we were able to fill them.
Got you. Lastly, so you're asking to retain them, okay, understanding that. From the workload for your attorneys, are they broken down by region?
They're broken down by APD 3 is our felony attorneys, APD 2 would be our hybrid attorneys, APD 1 is our district court entry-level attorneys.
How long does it take you to get them up to speed?
Oh, that really depends. It depends on the individual, of course, in terms of their level of practice and the experience of which they're coming in. But it also depends on the jurisdiction as to the type of cases that they face on a daily basis, impacts the type of skills that they are able to basically refine. So for example, if you are in a jurisdiction where there's a greater volume of a certain type of case, that brings up a certain type of skill, as well as a smaller jurisdiction that doesn't have as many judges, does not necessarily has the same amount of opportunities to have jury trials or bench trials for that matter.
Yes, ma'am. And the reason I'm asking that, when you talk about bringing people on, one, you have, we talked about how the numbers may be reflective when the vacancies occur and when you begin the hiring process. Two, being able to train folks to be able to be out on their own. So that's why I asked the question. So.
Yes, yes. And when we bring in individuals, we are essentially seeking placement to our offices that have the greatest need.
Okay. All right. Senator Rosepep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. I want to go back to the AI stuff because, as everybody knows, I mean, AI is real. It's here to stay. It's going to get better and better. And in the private sector, folks are really moving very fast down the implementation curve, and it's particularly happening in the legal profession. So we discussed this with the Attorney General's office, who gave us quite a bit of detail what they're doing. There's a lot going on in the private sector. Can you give us a little bigger view of what you've already done and what you're thinking about doing and planning to do?
So our initial steps are developing an AI policy in terms of permitted use, because it is a tool that can assist in the work. But when we speak about the fact that we deal with a great deal of confidential information, we have to be very careful as to what information we're putting in, even though it is a tool that can help us. So we're in the process of establishing policies. Simultaneously, we are providing education to our team members in regards to what AI actually means, how it impacts our work, and ways in which we can use it ethically and responsibly.
Could you give us some details?
So, to begin with, we couldn't jump on the AI bandwagon too soon because, quite frankly, AI was an open source. To develop AI, basically, you upload data, and being a law firm, we aren't able to originally upload data about cases. Essentially, for the first few generations of AI, you would everybody uploaded information, and that helped develop the brain of AI. It wasn't until recent that they started producing and making accessible AI platforms where the data you would...
Use your data, yeah.
Would stay protected.
Yeah.
And in point of fact, we started pricing a couple of services that would allow us to basically upload data. Things like Westlaw and Lexis now have services. They are not inexpensive. So we're looking to potentially bundle with other agencies. And when I say not inexpensive, I mean that we do currently have a contract for Westlaw. We would be adding a zero to the end of that value.
What's the contract now? I don't know. I have no idea.
It's about $600,000, I believe.
So it would be 6 million.
The additional price is about 600,000 to 800,000.
The additional price is 600, 800,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least that's what, I'm going to be very clear. That's the first initial.
I understand. No, I understand. I understand. It just seems to me that the reason AI is moving fast in the legal profession compared to others is because, and you're lawyers and I'm not, but it's basically about organizing, retrieving, and presenting information.
Very much so.
And that's kind of what AI is good at. And yes, AI can make mistakes, and obviously does. I mean, when my brother-in-law did his first AI 2 years ago on who I was, he had me living in the wrong place and going to the wrong school, but otherwise it was really good. But people make mistakes too. And so I would just encourage you to be forward-leaning on it. I know the Attorney General's office is being forward-leaning on it.
And we, to be clear, we've actually
worked with them, I'm sure.
We've had a conversation with them about meeting and potentially
sure
piggybacking, as they say, bundling. Ways in which we are slightly underfunded. So if we see other agencies are making advances, we have no problem going in and saying, hey, can we tag along? That's actually how we got our case management system, as I think this committee knows. And so that's something we're looking at. And we utterly agree. Our attorneys are so overworked.
Right. I mean, that's the point. I mean, that's what AI is good for, is dealing with overworked people, not having to do work that AI can do.
So I would just say for a law firm, there's different aspects and that we have to consider in terms of use of AI. So there is the legal aspect, and then there's the level in terms of those who practice criminal defense. And we also have to consider the other aspect of AI within the work. So as we introduce AI into the agency, we have to look at all those layers. It is, for us, is not a situation where we can simply provide it as a tool in and of itself without also presenting all the aspects as it affects our work. And when we were speaking about Westlaw, Westlaw is the current tool that we use in terms of legal research. Westlaw essentially is developing an AI tool that is specific for legal practitioners.
Sure.
Because it's coming into that space where they already have the niche that provides the legal research. It's also coming with a price tag that is 10 times of what we normally pay now. But similarly, we are bundled with the Office of the Attorney General for use of Westlaw, and we are essentially looking to hopefully continue to bundle in that way, if not with the AG, with other state entities, so that there is a sufficient cost
And that's for
reduction.
research, but the other piece of it is writing.
It's not limited to just that.
I mean, there are multiple use cases.
Right, but in terms of the things that we're looking at, it's not limited to research, so.
No, I presume,
yeah.
no, I presume
Yeah,
not.
but for us, though, you have to make the consideration for both. So, for example, we wouldn't simply jump into ChatGPT because of the work that we are doing, and we have to make sure there's certain securities, because once you put the information in there, it's in there.
No, you obviously are not going to chat GDP, but the industry is way beyond that at this point.
Sure.
So actually, along that point, though, you have to realize, as the Office of Public Defender, we're kind of also in a unique position about AI, because quite frankly, we're doing trainings about AI. A huge part of those trainings are about how to detect AI, false information, the use of experts in AI, and quite frankly, AI, the development of AI is actually making our practice much more complicated on the front end, meaning our investigation. So yes, there are places that will absolutely save us potentially, and we are absolutely going to do that because our attorneys and our staff need it. But we also, it's much like the development of cruiser cam and things like that.
We've heard that from other witnesses. So I mean, I think that's totally understandable. Every technology comes with opportunities and dangers. So we're not naive about that. One thing I'd ask, we've asked other agencies too, is you could by the end of this year, when you come back to see us next year, have a real report of here's what we're doing with AI, here's what's working, here's what's not working. Because I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think you have a very supportive group in terms of the money you need to take advantage of the opportunities here, and particularly for an agency that is understaffed. You have an above average, I think, incentive in terms of your situation to move down the learning curve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Madam Public Defender, before we close, if you would, please take a look at you with your team on page 9 and articulate for me and us your need, and you can get that back to us as time is getting to us. That's the cuts that are recommended by DLS. So I need for you with your team as we're going into decision-making phase to kind of articulate that to us. Not only that you need them, we know you need them, but give us some teeth. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not understanding.
So we are down to
come back?
decision-making time. No,
Yes.
you can just submit it to, get it to the committee.
Yes.
But take a look at that and justify why you need those positions. And it's not, it may sound unusual, but it's not an unusual feat right now where we are fiscally.
Yes.
All right?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most definitely.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Have you been across the street today?
I'm going to leave
No,
it here. for the
we
next
will
person.
be across the street on Monday.
On Monday?
Monday.
It's our
All right.
donation.
We may see you all tomorrow. That's a pretty neat trick, folks.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
there
yes.
are individuals
Hold on
who
a second.
signed up that did want to address the committee.
I do have.
Yes.
I do have Mr. Musselman, Anisha
Ms. Leteau, yes.
Leteau, and Lance Wines.
And there should be a Ms. Robin
Nolan.
Nolan.
Nolan? I'm not
Yes.
sure why they're crossed out on here, but okay. Are they here?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you guys have 2 minutes. I'm not sure why it's crossed out on my list. But,
It's going to take me longer than that to put this away.
what's that?
I said it's going to take me longer than that to put this away.
Just go, guys.
Wise man once said, don't play games in committee.
That's why you're our analyst. I'll step away. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, folks, when you come up, state your name for the record. If you'd like to submit your testimony, you can get it to us later as quickly as you can. You have 2 minutes each. And again, we'll find out why you're crossed out on that, but begin where you want to get started, so.
I'm Robin Nolan. I'm the one that was crossed out on the list. I don't know why. But anyway, good afternoon. My name's Robin Nolan, and I'm the office manager for the Public Defender's Office in our Harford County location. I have been employed by the office for 35 years, 10 months, and 8 days.
Wow.
As you know, we employ attorneys to represent our clients in criminal matters. Our attorneys cannot be effective in court without the support of the team behind the scenes, the core staff. We have office clerks, intake specialists, secretaries, paralegals, peer recovery specialists, social workers, office managers, who all play a pivotal role in assisting the attorney in their representation of our clients. I recently went to court to watch a closing argument for a murder case of ours. I looked around the courtroom and there was not one person there for our client, not one family member, not one friend, for a murder case. After I sat down, the client turned to his attorney and asked who I was, and they replied to the client, she is here for you from our office. She is here for you from our office. He turned to me, he nodded his head, and he smiled in the middle of a murder case. The court staff's role is supporting the attorneys in their job. The attorneys get beat up by the judges, they get beat up by the state, they even sometimes get beat up by our clients. Our role is to give them an environment of safety and less stress. The core staff takes everything we can off the attorney's plate so that they can focus on representing the client in court. Without us, the system breaks. We cannot go to court and represent the clients, but we are advocates for them in our own way. A reassuring phone conversation, an application filled out, securing a bed in a treatment facility, a legal issue well-researched, a subpoena typed. Without the court staff to handle these everyday tasks, the attorney cannot walk into court for their part. Our caseloads are too high for the attorneys to give the clients all that they require. We are never at full staff, but we are all public defenders representing our clients to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the, our committee, look, we have the greatest system in the world. Everything could be better, but you all play a vital role. It's five legs to that stool, and oftentimes we're lucky if we're on three that are sturdy at a time. So we appreciate what you do. So next.
I'll go next. My name's Anisha Letal.
Pull a microphone.
Thanks. My name's Anisha Letal. I'm the Division Chief of the Post-Conviction Division of the Office of the Public Defender. For those of you who don't know much about post-conviction, we go through a process to determine errors of a constitutional nature that occurred during the trial or the appeal in the process. Essentially, when citizens lose their liberty as a result of mistakes made during the criminal process, our division steps in to right those wrongs. Our efforts may lead to various forms of relief, but mostly it leads to a reduction of sentences. Now, every incarcerated person or person on parole probation has the right to post-conviction, has the right to counsel. The private bar does not handle many of these cases. It's a niche practice, and we basically take the lion's share of the post-conviction cases, which are thousands and thousands of cases that we have. The crushing caseloads are impossible to manage. Our unit, when fully staffed, has about 27 attorneys, and that is a statewide unit, so it's for the entire state of Maryland. Our attorneys work nights, they work weekends. They pour their hearts and souls out in the pursuit of justice for our clients. The caseloads cause tremendous stress to our attorneys. They have feelings of inadequacy, not just as attorneys, but as husbands, wives, and as parents. Essentially, you cannot do it all, and you definitely cannot do it all as a public defender. And despite my best efforts at trying to make it more manageable, it is simply a math game that we cannot win. And as a result, we lose excellent attorneys every single year. But the work that my division does also saves this state money, a tremendous amount of money. As you know, it is very expensive to keep a person in prison. And last year alone, just in 1 year, my division resulted in, the work that we do resulted in the reduction of a total of 575 years for incarcerated people, which in my estimation is about a savings of $23 million. So if you want to support Maryland families and sending people back to the communities and their families where they live, you need to support and invest in OPD.
Thank you. You spoke of the complement of 27 attorneys. How many do you have currently in that unit?
We have currently 24.
24. All right. Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Lance Gunnar Wines. I am an Assistant Public Defender Level 2 out of Washington County, Maryland. And I'm here today tasked with the ultimate challenge of setting aside my ego. As a trial attorney, humility isn't my thing, but I will say at any given time, I may have 1 dozen to 2 dozen clients a day. I may have 300 to 400 files sitting in my office. But before I can work my magic in the courtroom, those files go through a number of people. They go through, first, Julie, our intake specialist, who will meet with clients at the detention center and will gather their personal information for public defender eligibility. Randy, our office secretary level 2, who creates the actual physical file that I take into court. Casey, our office secretary level 3, who will connect me with my clients and file my motions on my behalf. Janelle, our administrative aide, who has been there longer than I've been around and is probably a better attorney than I am. She does all of the work that I don't yet know how to do. Teresa, our office secretary level 3, who has all of our circuit court attorneys in check. And trust me, if my ego needs check, theirs certainly does too. Gwen, our paralegal, who files subpoenas. Cheryl, our office manager, who makes sure that we have the tools that we need, our physical tools like pen and paper, which is still important. And Dale, our discovery secretary, who makes sure that I have all the information that I need. Now, I really do want to say this. I would not be the attorney that I am today without the team that is waiting for me back in Hagerstown. But I will say our office is not a well-oiled machine. Our office is a nuclear reactor. It's safe and efficient only because of the brilliant and dedicated minds that clock in each and every day
to make the magic happen. So please appreciate them as I do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you all very much. Keep doing the things you're doing.
You guys have a great day.
You need it, you need it. Do we have Steve Musselman? We do not. That concludes our hearing. Next up, we have our state prosecutor, and our analyst will get us started. Thank you, Madam Public Defender. We'll be talking soon. All right. Take care. Pretty nice tricks.
You know, Mr. Chair,
Nice box.
I'm going to ask the DLS library if we have a record of anybody playing Jenga at the witness table before. I don't know that they'll be able to answer that, but.
It's pretty cool.
All righty. Well, I remain the dulcet tones of Jacob Polico from DLS, here with the budget analysis for the Office of the State Prosecutor. OSP is an independent agency within the executive branch that investigates and, where warranted, prosecutes criminal offenses affecting the honesty and integrity of governmental officials, institutions, and the electoral process. State prosecutor can investigate on their own initiative or at the request of the governor, the attorney general, the General Assembly, the State Ethics Commission, or state's attorney. Certain criminal offenses, including election law and public ethics law violations, or state bribery law violations involving public officials or employees, misconduct in any office by public officials or employees, and extortion, perjury, or obstruction of justice related to any of the aforementioned. In addition, the state prosecutor can investigate and prosecute any offense that takes place in more than one county within the state or in more than one state, including Maryland. The office's fiscal 2026 budget increases by $1.3 million, or 37.6%, to a total of $4.7 million. Now, that increase is almost entirely attributable to reimbursable funds, which increased by $1.2 million, or 25.7%. Of the total budget. And actually, those reimbursable funds will at some point be present in the fiscal 2025 budget. There's a budget amendment winding its way through the process at the moment. The funds are already being used in the current year. These funds are from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. They provide funding for a collaborative effort with the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. And that collaborative effort is to investigate and prosecute violent acts and firearm violations, along with criminal gangs throughout the state. And that work is already underway. We have a section on fiscal 2024 on page 2. The budget bill included a deficiency appropriation of $145,253 to fund shortfalls in OSP's fiscal 24 budget. These shortfalls included communications, travel, motor vehicle, and contractual services expenses. And the analysis asks OSP to comment on the circumstances that led to these shortfalls and if they expect similar issues at the end of fiscal 25. And as you'll hear from them in a moment, these shortfalls were related to their office move, along with the proposed deficiency, which is also related to the office move of $193,403 for fiscal 2025. On page 3, we have Exhibit 1, which shows an overview of the agency's spending for fiscal 26. As I mentioned, the allowance totals $4.7 million. Salaries for regular and contractual personnel account for a total of 89% of the allowance for 18 regular positions and 13.5 contractual full-time equivalents. The majority of the funding for contractual FTEs is for Special Assistant United States Attorneys and other staff, which is funded by the reimbursable fund grant that I've just noted. As we see in Exhibit 2 on page 4, the fiscal 26 allowance increases by $1.3 million, as I mentioned, compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriation after we account for the proposed deficiency appropriations. The largest change is the creation of 13 new contractual positions funded with reimbursable funds from GOCPP under the SAUSA program, that's the Special Assistant U.S. Attorneys. These funds are being used to fund contractual FTEs, which I noted work with the U.S. Attorney for Maryland. And as I noted, the budget amendment reflecting those funds in fiscal 25 is not yet in the working appropriation, but will add $1.2 million in reimbursable funds for the same purpose. After we account for that budget amendment, the fiscal 26 allowance for OSP increases by just $78,264 compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriation. On page 5, we have the office's personnel data. There is one new regular position in the fiscal 26 allowance, and that's actually a contractual conversion of one paralegal. Accordingly, there's one contractual FTE eliminated, along with a 0.5 FTE, which the agency has determined is no longer needed. However, from that point, we add 13 new contractual FTEs, which, as I noted, are funded with reimbursable funds, funding the collaboration with the attorney for the District of Maryland. On page 6, we have a discussion of the Official Misconduct and Special Victims Unit, which just completed its first year of operations. That unit was created in fiscal 2024, and it's devoted to investigating official misconduct along with cases involving special victims. The existence of the unit allows OSP to place a more direct focus on cases involving matters of official misconduct and cases involving special victims, and to separate that work from the work of other areas of the office. OSP began reporting statistics from the unit as part of their Managing for Results submission this year. As we see in Exhibit 3, which can also be found on page 6, the unit received 58 complaints in its first year and opened 8 investigations. OSP is currently predicting that the number of complaints and investigations will grow slightly over the next 2 years as awareness of the unit and its purpose grows. OSP has stated that the unit is focused not only on the prosecution of these cases, but also on increasing awareness of these types of cases and educating agencies about what constitutes official misconduct or a case involving a special victim. Their goal in increasing awareness is to start those investigations earlier at the time the complaint is received by an agency, rather than having the case be identified and transferred later as one involving official misconduct or a special victim, only when OSP becomes involved, which, when it occurs later in the investigatory process, can lead to a longer process for OSP. They're actively working with inspectors general at other state agencies and other authorities to provide this education and increase awareness. In fiscal 2024, OSP made contact with 48 victims and witnesses as part of its investigatory process after receiving complaints, and charges were brought in one case in fiscal 2024. OSP should report on the conviction rate for cases brought by this unit, independent of other case types in future years, and the number of cases closed each year. On page 7, we have a discussion of criminal conduct complaints and investigations, which increase, and closed cases, which decrease. OSP receives complaints and referrals regarding misconduct in office, bribery, extortion, perjury, obstruction of justice, and other offenses. These complaints and referrals can be received from private individuals or groups, or from public employees, elected officials, or agencies. As we see in Exhibit 4 on page 7, in fiscal 2024, OSP received 1,022 complaints. Subsequently, 138 investigations were open. OSP previously stated that the growth in complaints was expected to taper off in fiscal 2024. However, the number of complaints increased by more than 300, with 29 more investigations open than in the prior year. OSP closed 153 cases in fiscal 24, and that's a decrease of 110 closures from the prior year. And the agency should discuss the reason for the decline in cases closed and any efforts to increase the case closure rate. On page 8, you'll find that DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? Seeing none, the agency can proceed. Just identify everyone before you move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Charlton Howard. I'm the state prosecutor for the state of Maryland. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about the important work of our office. I am joined today by our deputy state prosecutor, Sarah David, our newest member of our legal team, our senior assistant state prosecutor for election integrity, Brittany Dunklow, who is coming to us after distinguished tenure both in the Office of the Public Defender and in civil practice. And one of the most important people on the team, as always, our Director of Administration, Ruth Sweeney, who's sitting behind us.
So your newest member is one of the ones that OPD lost, huh?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of fitting.
You're getting a little nervous back there, you know. Welcome.
She's still fighting the good fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So proceed, please.
All right. So I would like to start off by thanking Jacob, as always, for his insightful analysis, and it's truly a pleasure to work with him every year as we come through this. And he's helped us out quite a bit. And in fact, and one thing I would take just to address right now is when he mentioned the closed cases, which are on page 7, Yes, that was actually an error on our office's part when we calculated the numbers for our MFR on cases closed. What we've done in all the previous years is we combined two numbers for that. We took the number of investigations we closed and then the number of complaints that we had investigated but did not result in a full investigation and closed. When we put this number together, we only included the investigations. And that, the fact we closed so many investigations didn't give me pause to even inquire behind the number. When we combine the two, as we've done in previous years, that's 570 cases. So if you look at, and we will be correcting our MFR on that. But if you look at that chart, 570 brings you up, if you had extended that red line up there, is much more reasonable and in keeping with the number of complaints we are receiving, which, as Jacob noted, has increased and continues to increase. As I testified at a previous year, we established an electronic complaint portal on our website to take in complaints from members of the public, because we didn't want to be like the Maytag repair person sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. You want to make sure you're getting these information. So we get a lot of complaints. The majority of them are not within our jurisdiction, but they do have issues that people have suffered wrongs or people are in need of help. And I think it's part of our mandate as state employees to try to help them. So we refer a large number of those cases. For example, in this last fiscal year, 370 of those complaints that we received, we referred to other state agencies who were in a position to help the person who was complaining to our office.
So in your MFR, do you denote that?
No, but I think we will going forward.
Okay.
Chair Jackson, because I think that it's an important statistic. I'm proud of that statistic. And I think that that's the gold plate customer service that every agency should try to do, is get people to the right place to address their problems. Some people don't, there's just nothing they can do. But I'm sure the Attorney General's office and the Attorney Grievance Commission and the other agencies we refer cases to appreciate that workflow. So we go through here. As mentioned, our office of the State Prosecutor has jurisdiction over specific crimes related to political corruption, official misconduct, and election law. We came here last year. We announced our new unit, as Jacob noted, devoted to working misconduct involving special victims and sexual assault investigations. We're pleased to announce that this unit had its first trial last year and was successful in convicting a Talbot County police officer who was having sex with teenage girls while on duty. And you may have seen some press coverage regarding that. Our office has also continued to take on important corruption and election law cases throughout the state. We prosecuted a Prince George's County councilman, for example, for six-figure campaign theft. The Anne Arundel County Register of Wills for theft of funds meant to pay the taxes on an estate, and a Cecil County Sheriff for misconduct in office this year. As just a few examples of the type of cases we do. Our wide-ranging cases and expansive state role also led us to move offices last year. We have been in the same office location for over 25 years. Our agency has basically doubled, and with these new employees that most of them are assigned at the U.S. Attorney's Office, adds to additional burden to us, and so we had truly outgrown our spaces, and that occasioned our move. So though we stayed in Towson, we moved to 40 West Chesapeake Avenue there, and as Jacob mentioned, the additional cost to us of that move, which was fully coordinated and worked with DGS, but did increase rent and other costs associated with that. You'll see those one-time moving expenses in our budget. Our new offices also allow us to have more conference spaces for investigations and collaboration. As an example, we've done joint training with the State Board of Elections. We're able to absolutely host it at our office. And that's one of our most important partnerships with SBE as we continue our efforts that Brittany leads with election integrity. As I mentioned, Brittany's not only leading our election law program built on compliance, but also working on ensuring our election laws can address modern challenges, such as how artificial intelligence and deep fake technology could impact our elections. While our resources are limited, we work hard for our important mission. We appreciate the governor's allowance in our budget and concur with that allowance. Thank you so much for your attention, your support of our office. We have provided written testimony to address in more detail the concerns that Jacob had mentioned, and we welcome any questions at this time for our team.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and I appreciate more than you know, proud of you, your office. When I first got elected on this side of the world, on the legislative side of the world, we had some challenges that the office actually took care of it. They did a terrific job. The report indicates, and you mentioned briefly, about trainings that you conduct. Do you all conduct trainings with legislators or with the treasurers for campaigns, dealing with campaign finance?
We, directly and unilaterally by our agency, no, but we have participated in SBE training and information sessions involving others. Sarah, do you want to address that at all?
Yeah, I think that, this is one of the issues that, and thank you, Senator Jackson, I mean, you are a leader in this area, and we appreciate.
I became a poster child reluctantly, but.
But you've also been a leader in sort of this compliance space, and the challenge is, we have to sort of have this balance of making sure people can be included in the election process and having it be accessible, but also ensuring that people know what they're doing. And so we've worked with SBE to try to achieve that balance through sort of access to PowerPoints and videos and things like that. But that's exactly the note we're trying to hit.
Yeah, it's important. There are a lot of, if you look in both chambers and you look in the counties, quite a few over the last decade or so, counties have gone from commission form, a number of them, to council form of government, charter form of government, or some sort of modification of that. And so, we certainly know how things can occur. But again, we brought about some enlightening pieces of legislation because of that. Some things that, trying to put some stopgaps in, and afterthoughts are not, they don't feel good, but, getting to know your agency and understanding what the challenges are that are out there. I was just wondering if there was, if our treasurers or chairs of the campaigns, and I'll follow up with the administrator on SBE about it as well. So.
It's certainly something we'd be very interested in doing. As Sarah mentioned, compliance is really our goal. It's not, we want people held accountable, but the last thing I want to do is deter anyone from participating in our electoral process. We need everybody to do that. And I'd be the first to say that all the rules and regulations are not intuitively obvious when you begin the process. So
well, I mean, look, we do different types of trainings that we have to do that don't take that long. We do some virtual trainings, just reminders, basic reminders. Maybe that's something we can talk about down the line. I hope I didn't talk myself into another piece of legislation.
I'll be reaching out.
But I just think that, as we move forward, again, we want folks to feel freely, to get involved in the process. But having the understanding instead of being overwhelmed.
Absolutely. One thing I should add that we do as well is outreach to, a lot of times, we get some issues arising from small municipalities and some of the smaller rural areas at times, or smaller municipalities that just don't have the track record that not that we don't have problems with large municipalities too, but we've tried to participate in conferences and an outreach to them to let them know where we are. We get calls and try to avoid problems up front as we work through. And that's really
MML, MACO, and the larger counties, in Prince George's, I represent 3 counties, but in the Prince George's side where I live, 27 municipalities.
Yes.
Prince George's, county municipal association. I mean, those things could help. So, any questions from our members? Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you. I'm asking a question from my colleague who had to leave for a bill hearing. And it's a question we do ask frequently, how or if you're planning on using AI. Of all the departments we've spoken with, the AG's office is probably using it the most effectively. So when we see someone with similar kinds of investigatory work, we always ask that question.
Well, really, and thank you for the question. And when I heard it before, I thought it was spot on, because it is. You have to get in front of these, both from these technical initiatives, both from the cases of you have to be familiar with it so you can identify it. And as the Public Defender's Office has been identifying it, so from from an investigative perspective, so that you're dealing with things like whether there's a campaign ad that's been fabricated with AI for fraudulent or a scam for a fraudulent purpose that we have to utilize. But also from our own resource, we have, as you see, I feel humble coming in here after all the other agencies you've heard, because we're a very small agency. I think I've ratcheted up about 25% of us here, if you discount the sauces. Yeah. So we're an elite agency, I believe, but very small. And so we do look in trying to leverage every technical tool we can, and we work very, very closely with the Attorney General's office. We also work very closely with the U.S. Attorney's office and looking at initiatives that they're adopting, because they're on a federal level. Sometimes you can get a perspective, and I'm hoping that relationship continues on with whoever the new U.S. Attorney is. But we certainly have had, over the time of my 5.5 years here, we've had great relationships with the U.S. Attorney's office and every administration, and we've been able to partner with them to determine and to work jointly, but also to take advantage of training, to take advantage of technology, to take advantage of resources that would not otherwise be available to a very small but elite prosecutorial and investigative agency.
Vital.
Sarah, did you want
definitely. I'll also say that, a second component that our good senator would have asked, any updates on your federal partnerships? You mentioned the U.S. Attorney, but we're asking every agency since January 20th, have you had any indications from any of your federal partners, a lack of continued partnerships or the like?
Well, I think a prior witness used the term standstill, and there's certainly, I think there is a pause, a strategic pause, as we used to say in the military, to avoid inactivity, to engage. I do think I do see signs for cautious optimism that we'll be able to continue our relationships. For example, the SALSA program that we are, our Special Assistant United States Attorney program that we are running to provide resources to the U.S. Attorney to attack violent crime in the major areas of Maryland, which I think is spot on. Since we took over that program, we have filled a number of those vacancies. I had enough people to fill all of them when the hiring freeze hit and when there was a delay. So I had some very tough conversations with a number of people that we had extended offers to be state employees, but working with the U.S. Attorney's Office because they had paused everything. Well, they just lifted that pause with a number of the employees that we had extended offers to so that we can move them into the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I don't, whether that's an outlier or a sign of great things to come, but that is certainly one positive element. And I think maintaining those relationships, same way investigatively, because we're a unique agency. We do our own investigations, or we can do them jointly, but we can do them entirely unilaterally, as well as our own prosecution, as well as our own appeals. So we have great working relations not only with the U.S. Attorney's Office, but with the FBI. Do that. So we have seen no change in that relationship going forward, but there hasn't been any significant events to put it to test. But certainly the communication channels stay open on all levels. So that's all I can say at this point. But as I say, I'm cautiously optimistic that our relationships will continue.
Absolutely. Keep us abreast of anything you need and all the good works that you all continue to do. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
We don't have any witnesses.